Good morning. It is a Wednesday and a Would You Rather Wednesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. He's Griffin. Today's program is brought to you by UMBC basketball. Tonight, the UMBC women are at home. They take on NJIT. You want to get your tickets for that or for Saturday afternoon when they host Vermont. And the UMBC men back home next Wednesday. They've been hot. They take on Binghamton. America East looks like it's fairly open. Great opportunity for the Retrievers to keep stockpiling wins. You need to experience game day at the Peak. Go to umbcretrievers.com right now in order to get your tickets. Trying to get the Would You Rather Wednesday scenarios posted. I normally like to post them to Facebook first because then I can copy and paste them to Twitter and then see if I need to shorten them in some sort of way. But Facebook didn't want me to do that this morning, so it's really screwed me up because I've got to rewrite them out entirely. I know that doesn't affect you in any way, but I'm going through it, and so you have no choice. A few minutes, our buddy Brian McFarland. Of course, Mr. Raven's salary cap himself. He will check in with us. We try to do this every year with Brian just to sort of lay out the Ravens' offseason, the reality of it. This obviously is a bit different because it feels like there's one thing. There's one thing. It's not actually true. There are other things the Ravens have to deal with. Like, they do have to make some decisions about guys. But, yes, obviously it feels overwhelming in terms of the one thing that lays in front of them. So we'll talk to Brian about that. It's I don't know, man. It's weird because, it just feels like it's not a normal offseason. Even talking about I had somebody message me yesterday like, dude, you're not really putting all that much out there about the offensive coordinator thing. And you're right, I'm not. The reality is what I said on Monday. It feels so weird to me. How do I talk about what offensive coordinator is the best fit in Baltimore if I don't know what the quarterback is that's going to be the fit in Baltimore? What am I supposed to do? Break down what Chad O'Shea would bring to a hypothetical bridge quarterback? This is this bizarre nature of what's going on in Baltimore. Hopefully, it gets squared away. Hopefully. But, yeah, I just everything about this offseason feels very strange because there's a 10 billion pound gorilla and then there's anything else. Even talking about the draft, there's multiple. I think Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah both have the Ravens taking Anthony Richardson in their mock draft. And those are guys that we always have on every year around draft time, and I'm sure we'll have on again this year during our weekly draft segments leading up to the draft. But, I don't even know how to talk about it because I want to say it's crazy, but I get it. I get it. I'm telling you, I think the rubber should meet the road before the NFL draft. Joe Corey disagreed yesterday. He said that's for next offseason. You just go ahead and play this thing out with a tag. But is there an argument that if you're going to move on from Lamar next offseason, you don't go ahead and already draft your quarterback this year and be prepared for it? I don't operate that way. I think that's nuts. You draft a quarterback when you need a quarterback. But if you love Anthony Richardson and he's I don't know. Bizarro world, man. Bizarro world. But we'll talk to Brian McFarland. We'll lay it out. Drew's going to join us as he does every Wednesday for better or for worse, and I don't know, stuff, things. The whole kit caboodle coming up on a Would You Rather Wednesday edition of the program. All right, couple of things off the top. Congratulations to Scott Rowland. He does get into the Hall of Fame. Todd Helton does not. He comes up just short, which was kind of expected. Looks like he will get in, however, in the next year or two. It seems like sort of a fait accompli that Todd Helton's going to be a Hall of Famer. Interesting to see for the likes of Billy Wagner, for example, if those trends continue and he continues moving towards the Hall of Fame. There's a little bit of an anti-Scott Rowland thing out there. There are the people that will say, if you got 10% on your first ballot, then the answer, Drew talks about this a lot, where you should just have one ballot. Put them on for a year. No limit to who you can vote for. Is this person a Hall of Famer or not? And the argument from some is, if only 10% of voters the first time they were presented with Scott Rowland, thought he was a Hall of Famer. How does this happen? And it's an interesting argument because I am good with Scott Rowland as a Hall of Famer. I think Scott Rowland's deserving of the Hall of Fame. But I get the argument. The argument would be, are you really now voting for him because he's definitely a deserving Hall of Famer, or are you more voting for him now because you want somebody to get into the Hall of Fame? Because in other years, there were more candidates on the ballot that you thought were stronger, and you don't want to just not vote for anybody. And it's an interesting argument that it's impossible to answer, right? Like, it's impossible for anyone to really sit down and say, because we criticize someone who turns in a ballot with like one name on it or a blank ballot. We beat them up. We make fun of them on the internet. We suggest they should have their vote taken away. It's not, stop.
Well.
But is there an argument? If they say to you, well, it's funny because the last time you had the chance to vote for Scott Rowland, you didn't. Why are you voting for him now? Are they not more consistent? I think this person's a Hall of Famer or not. I'm not going to suddenly look up and say, well, you know what? Now that the ballot's a little bit clearer, now that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are off the list, I might change my mind on this guy. I don't want to take anything away. I think Scott Rowland is deserving as a Hall of Famer, and I'm good with it. And I've always said I'm more of a big tent guy when it comes to the Hall of Fame. To me, if I think you might be a Hall of Famer, I'd go ahead and vote for you to be in the Hall of Fame. That's me personally. That's Glenn Clark's opinion. Irrelevant as it might be. But I understand the argument for, are we just voting for guys for the sake of voting for them? I don't think that's the case when it comes to Scott Rowland, but I get it. It's weird that so few people thought he was a Hall of Famer the first time, and then we got there eventually. In the end, I think it's you got the right answer, so I'm good with whatever it took to get to the right answer. But it's at least compelling enough to discuss. I've always thought that, as much as I make fun of Drew for everything, I've always thought he was on to something with this. Remove the limit to the number of guys that you can vote for. Put them on the ballot. Say, you got to do your work. You don't get to wait a couple of years and read more think pieces and see how the wind's blowing and say suddenly, well, everybody else thinks this guy's a Hall of Famer, so maybe I should vote for him. You got to do your work. That guy's eligible. You've got to figure out, yes, no, are they a Hall of Famer? Now, I'm opposed to completely removing them from the equation if they don't make it in the first time. I think that's wrong. But I get where Drew's coming from. What's changing? Public opinion? You suddenly feel like there's pressure. Everybody else thinks so maybe I should think so as well.
Why did they do like the 10-year thing to begin with?
Well, it used to be 15 years on the ballot. They pulled it back to 10 years, and some people thought that was uniquely to try to get Bonds and Clemens off the ballot, just because it was creating a log jam. The longer these guys were on the ballot but not getting in, it was maybe blocking other people from getting in. So their argument might be for Scott Rowland, right? Like, the argument might have been we moved it from 15 to 10 to try to get Scott Rowland in, because if it had continued to be 15, Bonds and Clemens would still be on the ballot, still not be getting in, and there might still be votes going to guys, Schilling, whoever it is, that would be taken away from other candidates getting in. It's unique. The idea was always this typically, I think the threshold is 5%. You got to get 5% of the vote in order to stay on the ballot.
J.J. Hardy didn't get a vote.
Yeah, real shame for J.J. You got to get 5% of the vote to stay on the ballot. And so this unique problem that they've experienced had never really come along before. Like, you'd never really had a situation where guys that should be in the Hall of Fame were log jamming the ballot because not everybody was willing to put them in the Hall of Fame. It's unique for sure. And there are still guys that are, on that, like, Alex Rodriguez, Manny Ramirez. There are still guys that are on the Hall of Fame ballot but aren't getting into the Hall of Fame that are taking up spots because not everybody can come to an agreement about whether or not they should vote for them. It's very complicated. It's extraordinarily complicated. You know how I feel about it. I think it's interesting. I think the conversation is compelling. I still think that at some point the Hall of Fame needs to purposely try to do something to get the steroid guys in to stop the nonsense. The ballot that they did this year that got Fred McGriffin that had Bonds and Clemens and Schilling on it, like that still was sort of stacked. It was the same group of voters. It wasn't anyone whose inclinations were, let's ignore the steroid thing and just vote on merit. I think at some point, I've said this for a long time, it's more embarrassing for the Hall of Fame. It's more embarrassing for the sport to not have those two guys in particular, because I'm not, anybody else we can debate about, but those two guys in particular we can't. Bonds and Clemens are Hall of Famers, no matter how much you don't like them. There's no debate. There's no, well, only because no, these two dudes were two of the greatest baseball players of all time. At some point, the Hall of Fame needs to figure out a way to say, look, we're going to put together the right committee. We're going to put together the right whatever it is that's going to get these guys in just so we can be done with it. And if you guys don't want to show up for the induction ceremony, maybe we find a way to make this unique, that we do a special induction ceremony. That's one of the arguments that's been made, is that the current group of Hall of Famers has sent letters and said, you put those guys in, we're not coming back that weekend. And it's all part of the pomp and circumstance in Cooperstown, right? Like, all of the Hall of Famers are back every year. It's some religious ceremony of some sort. And I get it. It's meaningful to the people that are involved. So they say, you put those guys in, we're not coming back. We're not going to be a part of it. Now there's more pressure to not put those guys in. So just create its own thing. Say, look, we need to get this over with. We need to stop this nonsense. It's embarrassing for us. So we're going to create our own thing. You guys don't want to be a part of it? That's fine. We'll have a weekend at another time during the year, in November, whenever it is. Get these two guys in, be done with it. If you're mad when they show up, they get their choice. They can show up at future Hall of Fame ceremonies or not. If you're mad about it, Tom Glavine, whoever you are, I'm sorry. We just got to do this. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. But doesn't mean anything less for Scott Rowland. Good for him. Happy for Scott Rowland. He and Fred McGriff will be be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame later on this summer. So, obla di, obla da. I'm not really sure what else there is to say about the subject. I think that's the only big news item from today. I, of course, was watching tennis last night. Tommy Paul will be the second straight Grand Slam that there will be in America in the semifinals. But
how's Greg holding up?
What?
Because he was big
he's big on Ben Shelton. He loved Ben Shelton did get a set. It looked like he was going to get the swept out, but he did end up getting a set. Good for him. Tommy Paul is going to go get his ass handed to him by Novak Djokovic. Novak Djokovic just destroyed Andrei Rublev last night. Beat his ass. 6-1, 6-2, 6-4. Just destroyed him. And if that's what he did to Andrei Rublev, my God, there's a chance that Tommy Paul might not get a game. Like, it could be bagels in the semifinals. But it doesn't mean he's not a semifinalist, and he's got that going for him. And, again, just nice to see American men's players involved, save for that one John Isner run. We just haven't seen this for decades. So now to have back-to-back slams where an American man has been relevant, it's nice for American tennis fans. The casual person doesn't give a rat's ass about Tommy Paul because you don't know who Tommy Paul is. And I don't blame you. I get it. I completely understand. All right, we're going to grab a break early just so I can try to get Would You Rather Wednesday posted because I'm getting frustrated by social media. Today's show also brought to you by PressBoxOnline.com/offers. There is another offer on the table for you. If you've never signed up before with DraftKings, now's the time to do it. Because if you go to PressBoxOnline.com/offers and click on the DraftKings logo, new players who bet just $5 can win $150 if either quarterback throws for more than a single yard in the Chiefs-Bengals game. That's PressBoxOnline.com/offers to sign up right now. Again, PressBoxOnline.com/offers. When we come back in, our buddy Brian McFarland, Russell Street Report. He is the sort of the salary cap analyst and expert. We will break down, preview the Ravens offseason with him next. It's Glenn Clark Radio. It's the perfect time to sign the young basketball fan in your life up for a membership in the Retriever Kids Club. It includes free youth admission to all regular season UMBC home games, plus a t-shirt and a drawstring backpack. Membership is only $35. It makes a great gift. Visit UMBCRetrievers.com/Kids Club for more info. Membership is available for kids 12 and under in the Retriever Kids Club. Again, UMBCRetrievers.com/Kids Club.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our annual Best Of issue. On the cover, we recognize Orioles catcher Adley Rutschman as our 2022 Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, and he sits down with us to discuss how his arrival in Baltimore was simultaneous with the Birds' turnaround. Also inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of the year throughout the local sports scene. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Looking for some excitement in the new year? Laurel Park has plenty of live horse racing events to spice things up this January. The much-anticipated Winter Meet kicks off on January 1st, plus we've got special MLK Holiday Racing on Monday, January 16th, and the Winter Carnival Stakes on Saturday, January 21st. Winter may be cold, but the racing at Laurel Park is hot. Learn more about upcoming January events by visiting laurelpark.com.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn, over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
Tune in to Simply the Bets every Tuesday and Weekend at Bookies every other Thursday at 11:40 a.m. And if you really have nothing better to do, keep listening to this show too.
All right, back in here on GCR. It is a Would You Rather Wednesday. I've got it up on Facebook. You can go find it right there at facebook.com/Glenn Clark Radio. I'm going to get it up on Twitter in a minute. But Would You Rather Wednesday scenarios are at least posted somewhere for you to get figuring it out, get talking about it. If you missed Stan the Fan Charles and Ross Grimsley catching up with Matt Blood, Orioles Director of Player Development, earlier in the week, you can find it right now, facebook.com/PressBoxSports, youtube.com/PressBoxOnline, or PressBoxOnline.com/video. Great conversation with Stan the Fan Charles, Ross Grimsley, and Orioles Director of Player Development, Matt Blood. By the way, I posted about it on Twitter and Facebook. I did end up getting a copy of the Ravens 30 for 30 that's going to air next week. It's wonderful. I'll share some more thoughts. I think we're going to try to have the filmmakers on either this week or next week, and so I'll share some more thoughts. I don't really want to give anything away. I did share on social media that I was reminded that at one point, and I had totally forgotten about this line, it's just two people that I love dearly. John Madden once described Tony Saragusa by saying, he needs a little less head or a little more helmet. It was just one of my favorite things ever. Like, I had such joy. There's a lot of things that'll give you a lot of joy when you watch it, but that one in particular, because I'm just such an obsessed John Madden fan and love Tony Saragusa. Like, the reminder of that line made me very, very happy. So Can't wait for you guys to see it. And I just don't really want to say anything much more about it because I don't want to ruin it for you. You're gonna love it. It's exactly what you want it to be. This 30 for 30 that ESPN's going to air next week about the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. All right, we try to do this every year as the offseason gets underway. We'd like to check in with him periodically. He is very, very good at what he does as far as being the salary cap analyst for Russell Street Report. Here's our buddy Brian McFarland, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Brian, it's Glenn. It's great to catch up with you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time for us, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Brian, I was talking about this beforehand. This is the weirdest I've ever felt going into a Ravens offseason, like by far, because it almost feels like, what the hell are we even doing talking about anything else? Like, I know we should talk about Ben Powers, and we should talk about Chuck Clark, and there are other things that we should discuss, but Jesus Christ, like it's like the sun is just staring at us, and we're like, hey, but do you see that one cloud over there somewhere? Like, there is one thing that is so central to every conversation that we have that it just sort of feels like everything else is nonsense, right?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, that elephant in the room of what's going to happen with Lamar is definitely. I mean, it overshadows everything. And you mentioned earlier the offensive coordinator decision, pretty much everything. Who are they keeping, who are they getting rid of, and obviously getting a long-term deal done makes one set of cap issues. But if you got to tag him, it's another set of cap issues, and if you tag and trade him, it's a different scenario. So yeah, absolutely, it's pretty much all up in the air.
So let's go through those three if we could, Brian. Give me the ramifications of all three scenarios of playing on the tag, of tag and trade, and then just getting a deal done. What do all three of those things mean to the cap?
Yeah, I mean, the worst obviously is the tag and keep him, because that's going to be $45 million against the cap, unless they would have till July 15th to get a long-term deal done. But if not, he stays on the cap for the year at $45 million, and that means that's going to mean having to make some really difficult decisions as far as some guys like Calais Campbell or Chuck Clark, or guys, they would prefer probably to have back next year, all things being equal. But, so that's the worst scenario. The tag and trade is a little easier. They could agree to a trade at any point. Obviously, they have to, Lamar, anybody trading for him has to speak to Lamar as far as getting a deal done, because they're not going to trade for him without having some kind of deal in place, which creates a really odd dynamic of, usually it's the agent. Okay, the Ravens say to Lamar's agent, you go out and see what you can find, and who you want to sign with, and we'll work on trade compensation. But it's really weird saying to Lamar, go talk to the general manager of the Falcons, or it's just a weird dynamic. And to be honest with you, because obviously the fully guaranteed contract being the big issue of, if he had an agent now, that agent would know if somebody's going to give him fully guaranteed.
That's fact.
I know it's tampering. I know it's tampering and all, but they would know, and that's the weird dynamic now. And then if nobody's going to offer it, it would be done. But if somebody's going to offer it, then he's going to say, "Hey, I want to be traded there."
Correct. All of these things seem to be true. So, I still don't have this is the funny thing. I still don't really even have a great gut feeling, right? Like, I guess I'm defaulting to the gut of it ends up being a tag situation just because it's the one that's sort of the least dramatic of all of it. To your point, it's not ideal, it's not good, but it's sort of the least dramatic. It's the least, explosive of the three scenarios. So I guess I'm just defaulting to that being the way this thing plays out again. But there is a part of me, and I'll admit openly, Brian, I can't fathom the Ravens becoming the first team in football history to have a franchise-level quarterback and just move on from him. But there's a part of me that says, look, if you still aren't sure that you want to do this, then maybe it is just time to go ahead and make a trade and get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, as you said, I feel like I've been wrong at every turn in this saga. So I would have thought they would have gotten it done 2 years ago, and then last year. So yeah, I don't have a great feeling with it either. I agree, probably the likely scenario. And you had Joel Corey on yesterday, and Joel is fantastic,
Right.
with this kind of stuff, and his thought of probably punting it till next year probably is the most likely scenario. They don't seem to be interested in trading him. Whether that was lip service, because you can't come out and say we're trading him, but or whether that's the way they really feel. But I think that probably is the most likely scenario. If it is a tag and trade, I mean, I would have to think the first thing DaCosta did this offseason was go to Lamar and say, do you want to be here?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then okay, let's work on it. Or you have to understand, we have the tag in our back pocket. But if you don't want to be here, then I would think at the NFL Combine that gets taken care of. I don't think, I know you guys were talking about trading him by the draft, but I would have to think the Ravens, if it's going to be a tag and trade, they're going to do it before the new league year so that they can do what they need to do. If they wait till the draft, then free agency is gone, and any other way of improving the team, plus the having to put the tag on the cap until then. So I would think they would have that worked out. If that's the scenario that's going to play out, I would think that happens before March 15th.
That makes sense. It makes. I'm using the draft only because of like the need scenario, right? Like
Sure.
you just don't want other teams to have already addressed quarterback, and then your market closes in on you. But to your point, if somebody addresses it with Geno Smith, right? Like that's one less team that's on the table that you could be dealing with.
Right.
So, and obviously you want to use that money in order to make the team better. It's just so insane that we're talking about this. But before I move on to the rest of this, Brian, if I could. One thing that I keep harping on, and I'll let you, tell me if I'm crazy, tell me if I'm onto something. I keep saying that I don't know that the answer is the problem's fully guaranteed and the Ravens don't want to do it. I don't know that, and I've even been told that there is a possibility that Lamar Jackson would be willing to find a number that isn't fully guaranteed, but it's just more than the 133 that has been reported to be on the table. But that being said, I keep struggling with the people that say, well, it's crazy to give a fully guaranteed contract to a quarterback because everything I've ever known about quarterback contracts they're all fully guaranteed. Like it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge because you don't say they're fully guaranteed, but tell me the quarterback who's ever not gotten all of their deal and frankly gotten more than that because the first time you had a problem, you went back to your quarterback's contract and gave them more money in order to create flexibility. Like, I'm so struggling with why it is that we're so worked up about the idea of the words fully guaranteed when whatever contract you give Lamar, it seems like he's going to get all of it no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at guys like even guys that, that sort of failed, Jared Goff is still kind of playing under the series of contracts he got starting with his big rookie deal. I guess Wentz would be the one big contract that, quarterback contract that fell apart pretty quickly. But I think you're right. I mean, when you're talking, if, 133, even at 133 million fully guaranteed, there's no way Lamar is going anywhere under that deal for 3 years because it would be cap suicide.
Right.
To move on. And, I guess when you get to that number, the biggest concern, if you went to 250 million fully guaranteed, is, if you had that catastrophic injury and it's fully guaranteed, it would, your cap would be, I don't even know how if you, 2 years later had to, carry 80 million on the cap for a quarterback who's no longer playing for you. And I know that scenario, these days with, modern medicine is unlikely, but that's the only real argument I would see is that if things turn out, you could look at Russell Wilson with what he got. If he has another bad year in Denver, what happens then? They really still can't get out from under the contract. So, so I guess that's the cautionary tale, but Russell Wilson could easily bounce back next year and have a great year and be the quarterback they expected. So it is an unlikely scenario, but that would be the only argument I can really see for it, other than just precedent, I guess.
Yeah, and that part obviously is to me the more significant part, which is that this is a franchise that doesn't want to be the one to rock the boat and doesn't want to be the one that gets stink-eyed at the owners' meetings and all of those things. Like that to me seems to be notable. Brian McFarland with us here on GCR. All right, Brian, let's talk about the other stuff because we have to. It seemed like for all of the sort of non-answers or dodginess of the Ravens end-of-season press conference, and I get it. That's how these things work. They almost can't give you straight answers in these scenarios. But it did seem like the one thing that was kind of most clear is that they probably don't think Ben Powers is going to be a Raven moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, he got the proven performance escalator last year that jumped his salary from I think it was we should have been $900,000 up to about $2.5 million. And, I speculated and a lot of people wondered whether that would mean his exit from the roster because of, at that point he was looking like a reserve spot starter. But he really, as we've seen before with a lot of generally our pass rushers, but defensive players, but guys who, really blossom in their last year right before free agency. So, kudos to him for putting it together. And, obviously it's certainly good timing for him because it probably does, probably especially with again, specter of Lamar's deal and whether it's $22 million on the cap because it's a long-term deal or 32 with the non-exclusive tag or 45 with the exclusive tag. That's going to take up a lot of space. And that probably means, again, guys that I'm sure they'd love to have him back, but it probably means he's priced himself out of town.
It does seem, and you brought up Calais Campbell earlier, but and I know obviously Chuck Clark's at the center of this. It seems like there's a number of places that it's unique, and it's one of the reasons why we talked about, broadly that they're maybe not in salary cap hell necessarily. It seems like there's a lot of places where they could go to find some money if they can get partners to work with them, and obviously that means you have to give extensions. But like right now, why wouldn't you be inclined to go talk to Kevin Zeitler about his number, trying to get it down and tacking on a couple extra years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I kind of assume, with if Calais Campbell wants to come back and Zeitler, them getting the Marshall Yonda treatment, as I call it. The last couple of years, Yonda was on a series of 2-year deals. He'd finish the one, he'd get to the last year, and they tack another year on, and they did that, I think, 3 years in a row. So yeah, that's a way of keeping the guy around. Calais, 2 years ago, Calais took a pay cut. He earned it back. He did earn it back through incentives, but those things are. I'm not saying he deserves a pay cut now or anything like that, but it's certainly there are certainly options out there, and those would probably be the two most likely ones to get some cap relief and add a tack a year or two on. Campbell may not see that second year, but Zeitler could easily see a second and third.
Sure. Oh, sure. The way he played this season, Jesus, man. My God. The Chuck Clark thing, of course, is a little bit more compelling. Does it seem like that's more of a scenario where, he feels like, hey, I could get a good deal if I could hit the open market. I'm not necessarily going to be enticed to talk to you about this. You're going to have to let me go free because I think there could be big money waiting for me.
Yeah, and he certainly had a nice year. Obviously, wasn't necessarily expected to play as much as he did, and I think he had the most minutes or most snaps on the defense this year. So, yeah, and he's a guy they might be able to trade for a late round pick, obviously with only 5 draft picks, and as much as they like draft picks, even though DaCosta said we're fine, that might be, I don't know that they're going to get more than a 5th or a 6th, but that's, if it turns into another Chuck Clark, because I think it was a 6th round pick. So that's certainly an option. There's about $3.6 million in savings there. And, he might just, he may say, look, I want to, I'm not going to get the opportunity here. I know Hamilton's going to, get more snaps, and, I want to go somewhere where I can, play full time, because I don't see that happening next year.
Yeah, that's the sense that I get. I get that sense about it, which is a bummer, because to your point, I thought he played well. I think he's been basically everything you could ask, especially given the circumstances. handled it like a pro's pro, but it just sort of seems like that's going to kind of come to an end at this point. And then give me the picture, Brian, before I let you go, of everybody's talking about, of course, the biggest problem besides Lamar Jackson that what the Ravens face is they don't have wide receivers on the roster. They'll get Rashad Bateman back, and so they've got one, we think, but that's the extent of the list. DeAndre Hopkins' name is being thrown around, and we believe he's available, and probably not all that expensive as far as what you'd have to give up in a trade, but what would the reality be for trying to acquire the contract of a DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah, I mean, they would probably have to, and that would be, as they've done when they acquired Bolden back in the day with the trades, and they would. I think he's due like, he's due like $34 million over the next 2 years. So they would have to, and again, this is where they would, talk to. The Cardinals would let them talk to him ahead of time, and they would work that out to take that $17 million or so, which would be what his cap number would be for the Ravens. They would take that, and I'm sorry, actually 19. So they would take that, turn a lot of that money into a bonus, spread it out over, probably a 4-year deal. Whether they expect him to play all 4, maybe 5-year deal. Yeah, so he's due $19 million next year and then $15 the following year. So, so they would turn a lot of that into a bonus. Obviously, he got that huge contract the first time he was traded. So, and then I guess there's a question of is he a $20 million a year receiver still, or is it something less than that? And that they would try to work that out with him ahead of time, and if it works, then they would make the trade and then convert that over to a new contract. And that $19 million, they could take it down to 10, something like that, 8 or 10 probably.
Is that doable if Lamar's on the tag?
It would be really, really difficult, and I'm sure that's one of their selling points, quote unquote, to a long-term deal is like, look, if we can get a long-term deal done, that first-year cap number is always low on a long-term deal. So while it might be a $50 million a year contract, we can get that number down to 22, or kind of where it is now, and then we'll have enough space to go get a guy, get you your receiver. So I'm sure everything they're throwing against the wall to try to make it happen. I'm sure that's one that's definitely going to come out.
Anything else that we should be monitoring? Any other name that you say, hey, just keep an eye on this. This could be interesting in the next couple of weeks?
No, I mean, it always seems like there's one unexpected cut. I guess the one there are 2 other interesting ones. Gus Edwards, obviously, again, the guy they would prefer to have around, but it's almost a $4.5 million cap savings if he's gone. If they have to find cap space, that's a place. And Devin Duvernay is an interesting one too, because he earned the proven performance escalator, and because of course it was only special teams,
right.
But because he made the Pro Bowl, he got his salary jumped from about $1 million to 4.3. Whether that might be too much, it's kind of the Ben Powers from a year ago, whether that's too much or not. And of course, a lot of that again will all depend on if they have to tag Lamar at the 45, then a lot of these guys you'd prefer to keep around and maybe aren't that expensive, but maybe become a little too expensive.
Dude, it's always great stuff, man. Incredible insight. At Raven Salary Cap on Twitter is how you follow him. Of course, RussellStreetReport.com is where you see all of his stuff. As hopefully we come to some sort of resolution, or not, in the coming weeks.
Right.
We will be in touch, my friend. Always appreciate taking the time for us.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Brian
guys, have a great day.
You too, dude. Brian McFarland, Russell Street Report, checking in with us here on GCR. And, of course, from one man with very valuable insight to a man who's going to make a will likely joke or something, I'm not really sure. We go directly from Brian McFarland to Drew Forrester of drewsmorningdish.com and 105.7 The Fan. Were those headphones not to your liking or something?
There was no sound in those.
Well, that doesn't seem ideal. Maybe we can get Griffin to take a look at that, because I think our buddy Rami is stopping by to train a little bit more today.
That'll be good.
What is your deal? What do you have for me today? What is this? What is this going to be? With
I don't
what?
know.
What?
I haven't seen you in 3 weeks. I'm ready to go. Let's fight.
About what?
I
What do you
have
want to
no
fight
idea.
about? What do you want to
But
fight
I'm sure
about?
we're going to fight
today?
about something.
What do we want to fight about?
I don't know.
What do you care about this week? I don't. Honest to God, don't even know what you.
We know
care
they're
about.
starting the PGA Tour event today.
Right, they're playing Wednesday through Saturday
Right.
because.
Well, they don't want
I'll
to.
fight you about this. It's so embarrassing that they won't just let Andrew Catalan call the golf tournament from the golf tournament. Like that's embarrassing.
Is it?
Yes, Nance is going to
calling
sit
it
in
and
the.
then leave.
He's going. No. He's going to sit in the stadium in Kansas City, calling the golf tournament from the stadium in Kansas City.
You
Yes,
you
that's
know
a
that?
fact.
Oh, gotcha.
They did it. By the
That
way,
is weird.
yes, it's so. Just let Andrew Catalan
Right.
call the golf. He's very good at it.
He is very good. He's the next guy.
Right.
He's going to take
Just
Nance's
say,
job.
Andrew, go on out there. You call the golf tournament this week, and next week Jim can go to Scottsdale. Like
So
what?
Nance will be in he's in Kansas City, right? Okay.
And they don't even try to bamboozle you.
They know that there's a thing called private planes, right? Doesn't Jim fly on a private plane?
Oh, of course, Jim Nance flies. You think
okay,
there's
no.
any chance that Jim Nance is hopping on United?
No, right. I mean, I'm saying. So, yeah, it's weird. Hey,
It's
Jim,
bizarre.
the golf tournament ends at, and I do understand, like, he probably gets there tomorrow.
Yes, and you got to do all the
and he
meetings
does all,
and
but
stuff.
it's weird.
Yeah,
I
you
don't know.
couldn't
Yeah,
send
just,
him. You couldn't send him
hey,
there
Jim,
earlier
take
in
this
the week.
one off.
Yeah, that's
Right,
what it comes back to.
I agree with you.
You couldn't just say, Jim, it's one tournament that nobody cares about in January.
Well, be careful.
Stop. You know
Be
what?
careful being overly critical.
For God's sake.
Yeah, right.
It's a January golf
I mean,
tournament.
this is like you saying something about Farrah Fawcett when I was 20. Be very careful. All right.
You're
Right.
comparing the Farmers Insurance Open to Prime Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, there
Like,
is no comparison.
He's up on that.
That's like comparing Roseanne Barr to Jennifer
Right.
Aniston.
Like, chill, man.
Right.
You can't say to the dude, just this one.
Right.
We'll see you next week.
Sit this one out.
Scottsdale. You love Scottsdale. Who doesn't love spending a week in Scottsdale?
Yeah, where are they next
See
week?
you then.
Where are they next week?
that's
Pebble
not-
Beach?
Next week's. Do they change it to make sure that Scottsdale is the same week as the Super Bowl?
Well, this year they did.
They did this year.
Yeah,
okay.
Scottsdale. The tournament is at the
Right,
Super
it's
Bowl.
the same week as
it's
the
the same
Super
weekend as
Bowl.
Scottsdale.
Right, correct.
So next week are they Pebble Beach? They
Probably,
must be.
I guess. That must be where they because they would have to do that in order to move things around.
Yeah.
Right.
They wouldn't be at Pebble Beach the week after because then that's Riviera,
And is that at CBS?
which is Tigers. These are all CBS.
These are all CBS. So when you can't say to Jim Nance, we'll see you at Pebble Beach next week.
Pebble Beach, Scottsdale.
Yeah, it's Pebble Beach.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Pebble Beach, Scottsdale, then the Riviera.
Right. So
After
that's
that.
where Tiger's going to limp around.
Oh, he's going to
Well,
go?
maybe.
Okay.
I mean, it's his event.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and okay. All
So
right,
he'll
all right.
he'll remember last 2 years ago didn't go so well for Tiger after
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
after the Genesis.
Yeah, that was where it happened.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. 2 years ago.
I've already forgotten about all of these
Right.
things. I've already forgotten
Yeah.
about it.
So Tiger
All right, well,
Tiger will
that's-
be getting a ride to the course this year.
Probably going to have a driver
All right.
this time.
Right.
That's all I really had for you. Thanks for
Okay, I
stopping
appreciate
by.
you guys.
Appreciate
Good seeing you there, Garrett. We'll see you boys next week.
Drew Forrester, Drew'sMorningDish.com. Today's show also brought to you by the
I
Toyota.
don't get water here, so I have to bring my own.
There is water if you'd like
Oh, there is?
water. Yeah, we can send Griffin back to get you some water.
Okay,
if you
we're good.
prefer. I mean, we can work on that. Don't ask for anything else.
No, I won't.
Don't ask for like a coffee or something like that, but we can get you some water. Today's show also brought to you by your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. You are in the...
I am hooked on Ted Lasso.
Next, you're going to tell me you're into Seinfeld.
Am I late to the Ted
you're
Lasso?
very late to the Ted Lasso part.
I love Ted Lasso.
Extraordinarily late.
I'm
to
through
it.
the
Well,
first
it's
year.
wonderful. We agree on
I'm
that.
through the first year, and I'm into the, she's now having the affair with the 21-year-old.
player, right?
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Like, you.
It lost me a little bit there.
Why?
What? I just don't think that that's.
I do.
I think a lot of what they've done has been very. Now you got to understand something
yeah.
about the show. I have a direct relationship with this show because listen.
The show that came out 3 years
No,
ago.
because
he just discovered because he's got a direct relationship.
No,
with it.
I do because I had Jamie Tart on my team in the soccer business.
Okay.
And I had Roy Kent.
Okay.
I had those guys.
Okay.
So they.
You willing to name names?
It doesn't really matter. No one knows who they are
I know.
anyway.
That's why I'm asking if you want to name names.
But I had those guys, and they're very real characters, very real.
Sure.
And I didn't have them. Well, anyway, I can identify with those guys, and I can identify with like the English part of it because I was around English soccer players a lot, and I lived in England for 3 months in 1993. Like I'm around that, so a lot of what they do and a lot of what they say, I have a connection with.
So, I'm still confused, but then why did you wait this long?
I didn't know. Well,
the entire world was talking
Apple
about
Plus.
this television.
I know. I didn't have.
Why
Apple
did you get
Plus.
Apple Plus?
I didn't.
Oh, you're doing it illegally.
Yeah, sure.
You could have done that 2 years ago.
I know.
Like they didn't.
Dude, we have a 10-year-old. At that time we had a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. We don't watch TV.
I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I figured out that when everybody on the planet was talking about the show, maybe I should take a look at it.
It's an awesome show.
Now
the first year was remarkable. The second year, it's gotten a little. I would say that this affair between the 60-year-old owner and the 21-year-old kid.
I don't know if she's supposed to be 60 or not.
I don't know how old she's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean
she's
quite fetching. I mean, like,
but that's a little far-fetched to me.
So it's interesting you bring that up.
There's not a billionaire soccer owner woman who is gonna hang out with a 20. No,
I'm not. Okay,
it's far-fetched.
There's two interesting things here.
It's far-fetched.
The first thing being, it is inappropriate, and they never really address that. They only address like the inappropriateness of the age. They don't really address the fact that like this would be a major scandal. This is an employee.
And I just took all of the courses for Odyssey.
Correct.
So now
Jesus
I'm really
yeah,
nervous.
Right? You know about all your biases.
I'm not allowed. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
when it said at the very beginning of the Odyssey thing, when it said something like, how much bias do you believe you have? None.
Oh,
a little bit, somewhat. Or a lot. I'm a lot.
There was an option for I don't know, and I just clicked I don't know.
I just put a lot.
Yeah, why not?
And then it came back and said, correct.
Yeah, right. You can move forward to the next part of the quiz.
I was so mad because I kept getting the first two of them. I got all, you do the little quiz at the end. I got them all right. I got 100 both times. But the third time, I kept getting 80. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm clicking all of the different answers.
Yeah,
I was
every
so
combination
mad.
that you can give. Is it 1, 2, and 4? Is it 1, 3, and 4?
I was so mad. I'm like, I'm biased against this thing. It sucks.
Anyway, no, this is the part that bothered me about it. The storyline actually kind of worked for me.
It works because
in the course of the show,
she's desperate for
affection. It worked
and
within the course of the show.
Her husband trotting around with that 25-year-old
100%.
hottie, right?
And so, and there is a parallel to be made. Like, why is this acceptable, but this isn't, right?
Although I shouldn't call her a hottie because I think that's a bias.
Yeah, it's a bias, 100%. You're not supposed to do that. By the way, the golf show is supposed to come back next week. And Drew's about to get a phone call.
Right.
No. The issue I had is they never addressed the power dynamic part of it. They never addressed the real issue isn't the age thing. The real issue is this is your employee. We all know now.
Oh, Sam needs a new contract? I'm happy to do that.
That's the part they never address, is why it's actually...
He hasn't been playing that well, Rebecca. It doesn't matter.
Right. They don't address that part of the inappropriateness of it. That was the only issue I had with the entire scenario is... It worked other than the you just left alone. It actually makes you a heel. Like, it makes you a villain in the same way that once upon a time, there are a bunch of dudes that thought it was just okay to, sleep with their interns and things like that because it was, they're a consenting adult. They can do whatever they want and never considered the power dynamic part of it. Yeah. What? What are you trying to say?
You sound
trying to say something out loud?
You sound like a man.
Let's be very clear.
I'll leave it alone.
I had no power.
I'll leave it.
I had no power.
I got you.
I'm good.
I hear
There was no power
My
dynamic.
wife looked over at me during the darts scene and she said, "If you're crying, if
He's
that's
so obsessed with Ted Lasso.
If that's
this is so funny.
If that's a tear,
yeah,
you can sleep on the couch tonight." Because you didn't cry at our wedding.
Oh, okay.
They hold over.
Okay.
By the way, Garrett, let me give you this little tip, and everyone listening who's never been married.
So it's okay. It's what he thinks my son's name is too.
Listen, when you get married, listen to me, everyone, loud.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, when you get married, you must cry at your wedding.
I'm glad you bring this up.
Because if you don't, it will be held against you for the rest of your life when you stumble upon something in your wiser, more mature years that brings a tear to your eye,
Right.
it will always be held against
This
you.
is relevant. However,
cry.
I went with the plan of get so drunk on your wedding day that nothing that happened can be held against you.
Okay, well,
like,
I'm just telling
eternally,
you, if you don't cry
Yeah.
at your wedding,
Yeah.
and then you are moved to cry at anything in the rest of your life. The Capitals winning the Stanley Cup. My wife said,
Did you really cry about
I
that?
said I'm going to cry. She said, if you cry, you have to stay out here for a week.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And I'm like,
Oh,
well, give me
boy.
some blankets.
Yeah, right.
Because Drew's,
Going to be here for a minute.
when this face-off happens,
yeah,
I'm
gonna be here
crying.
for a minute.
Right.
Drew's really excited about Ted Lasso.
I
Have
love
you-
Ted Lasso.
Have you heard about Friends? It's 6 young
No.
people. They all move. They kind of live together in New York. It's a whole thing. You should look into it at some point.
Never heard of that.
It's quite the television.
Sounds like it.
program.
I mean, I'm thinking about making a show where you get this bar and you and you just get
Maybe
a
there's
group of
about a mailman.
you get a group of people. Well,
Yeah.
you can do a mailman, sure.
Okay.
But I've got this idea where
Maybe-
you get a bar.
Will he go on Jeopardy at some time?
I
At
don't
some
know,
point?
but you just get a bar and you
It's a
put
hell
all
of a-
these people around and
He has no idea.
I
No
know,
clue.
right.
No clue.
Anyway, Ted
whatsoever.
Lasso's awesome.
None. Zero. Yes, Ted Lasso is a good show.
Be
I'm
curious,
glad
not judgmental.
there is one more season coming.
Yeah, it's coming up.
and it is coming up soon. So at least you'll be on for that.
Right,
Like,
I'll
at
be
least
right
you'll
up to
be-
par.
Right, you'll be right on board for that. All right, you and I did not talk last week, so your reaction to the press conference was what?
I'm just trying to piece together like what exactly. I'm trying to remember what exactly transpired. Nothing out of the ordinary. I'm so, and I think you are too. Like I'm so stunned at people who think the Ravens are going to get up there and tell people what they're really thinking.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And now your counterpoint to that might be, well, then you shouldn't do it at all. Okay. But there were some things that you could have gleaned from that the other day if you really picked apart at it and you listened to what Eric said. Eric didn't say that it's difficult to negotiate with Lamar because Lamar likes to talk via text. He didn't say that, but that's the truth. That Lamar's not easy to negotiate with because Lamar doesn't like to talk. He likes to text because he's 25 years old.
So
and
everybody-
that's
yes.
what they do, right?
Correct.
So Eric didn't come out and say that directly, but Eric did say it's a challenge to negotiate with Lamar because we're usually in two different places. And then Eric said, like today he was in the building. So I chatted with him for a few minutes. But in the normal course of their lives, Lamar's a texter. So if you listened, Eric did give you a little something. But for the most part, they're not going to tell you what they're doing. They're just not.
Correct.
There's too much at stake. Dismissing Lamar, I mean, not dismissing, but in addition to Lamar, there's too much at stake otherwise, whether or not it's the coordinator. I mean, they're doing their very best right now. You could tell, right? They're doing their very best right now to paint themselves as an organization that has a lucrative position open. Yet, we all know
If you don't have Lamar
if you don't have a
Jackson, you've
quarterback,
got
it
nothing.
changes the
Correct.
whole dynamic. Now, if you're Chad O'Shea
Right.
and
This is
you're
your
making
opportunity.
$500,000 and the Ravens come along and say, hey, how's $1.2 million sound? We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Chad O'Shea's going to say,
Who
what time
cares?
do you want me to
Yes.
come to
Right.
Baltimore?
Right.
So these Neanderthals in
But
town.
to your point, if the guy you want is someone who is in demand and has other options, if Chad O'Shea also has a call on the table from, and I don't even know who
The
this would
Chargers.
be. Yes, correct.
He-
who do need an offensive coordinator.
He might go there
He'd say,
because they know who their
Yes,
quarterback is.
exactly right.
100%.
Yeah.
So, but these people in town who continue to beat these both media and fans who beat these guys up for what they don't say at the press conference, they're not going to say anything.
That's up. And by the way, that's as I wrote about
just
this.
not.
Like this is the way that I operate now. I don't go, and that's fun. Like I wasn't even in town last week, so it wasn't an option for me. But I just don't go.
I could have written the whole thing before they went.
Right.
Like
It's fine. I still think they should do it. Right. I still think that
they have to do it.
there's an obligation for you to go out and take the questions. But for me to pretend like there's some world in which they're going to go ahead, let's lay out everything we want to do this offseason.
John, were you
for
disappointed that Lamar didn't play the last 7 games of the year? Dude, disappointed's not the word. I was pissed. Are you kidding me? I can't believe he didn't. You think he's going to say that? They're negotiating with him. Like, they're trying to get him to come back to play for them. No one's going to badmouth him. No one's going to say anything negative about
or on the flip
the
side,
offensive coordinator.
If they've decided that they're moving on from him, they're not going to do it because they want him to be more valuable in a trade.
Correct. So, anyway, I thought it was what it was. It was what I expected. I didn't really anticipate them saying anything. I understand why they did. Why they handled the Roman thing the way they did in terms of allowing him to release it. I get it. Again, people are going to say whatever they want to say. That John fired him, which isn't true, and people are going to say that that the Ravens were backed into a corner, like they had to let Roman go.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to do anything. They knew, and I think Roman knew. At the end of the day, he knew, like this is the end of the road has come here,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew
it's just over, right?
And he knew it,
Right.
and John didn't have to fire him. Because Roman came in on Monday and said, if you're going to do this, just tell me and do it today. And to John's credit, John said, give me a day to sort through some things and come back in here tomorrow and let's chat. And John and I'm sure Roman's might have even appreciated that. Like, okay, no problem. I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, Roman's calling his agent saying, hey, be ready. Start getting on the horn. Like, this is not going to work out. Because John would have told him right away on that Monday,
Mm-hmm.
Greg, what are you talking about?
Right.
You're
Right.
a valuable part
Correct.
of this.
You're here. You're the offensive coordinator for this thing. Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So when John said, why don't we meet tomorrow morning, talk about the season, have some coffee, Roman knew right away. And he went in and called his agent and said, get the thing put together. Here's my quote. Call the Chargers. I'm ready. Like, everybody, I thought it went exactly the way it probably should have gone, in fairness, for a guy who had been a very valuable part of their organization. And John's not going to take a leak on him because John's trying to hire the next guy.
Right.
And he wants the next guy to know that it's a good place to work.
Well,
and that
you want to project stability. You want to project an
Right.
organization where you're not coming here at risk of getting fired. You're not coming here because there's going to be a crazy boss that walks in one day and says,
Right.
Get rid of this guy.
Right.
You're not coming to work for Dan Snyder.
I thought it went exactly the way that it was going to go. And the fact that they let Roman announce it an hour before their press conference kind of told you that. Like, there's no hard feelings. You had a nice 4-year run here. You made $4 million. Did you get beat up a little bit? Sure. Were people unfair to you? Yeah, maybe. But it's part and parcel of the job. Like, you're going to get beat up. It is what it is.
The issue with trying to project stability is that none of it matters if you don't know who your quarterback's going to be.
Well, I would agree with that.
It's utterly irrelevant if you don't
There's
have
no
a
question.
quarterback.
And I'm sure that's the first question you would ask, if you put yourself in the shoes of these potential coordinators, the first question you ask is, what's it pay?
Right.
And the second question you ask is, who's going to be the quarterback?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Now,
but it even goes a step beyond that, right? At every level of the organization, and I think you know this from having dealt with them, you can deal with someone who has nothing to do with football in that organization. Anytime a quarterback is hurt, they are on edge. Everything about an NFL franchise is structured around one thing: the quarterback position. If we feel good there, then we feel good throughout the bill. Everybody feels good when you feel good about your quarterback. Even when you didn't have Lamar Jackson, even when it was Joe Flacco, you talk to anybody in that building,
Right.
the year that Joe Flacco was coming back off the injury and they didn't know if he was going to be there for the start of the season, it was anxious. There was anxiety within that building going into the season. The moment that Joe Flacco showed back up, all's good.
Mm-hmm.
And this wasn't even Lamar Jackson that we're talking. This is Joe Flacco that we're talking
Right.
about. This is the way that it works in the NFL. You feel exactly as good as your quarterback situation allows you to feel within an organization. So every layer of it is, hey, we can say we've got this great defense, and we can say that we've got stability, and we can say that we're one of the best organizations to work for, all of those things. But at the end of the day, everything centers around, but do you have a quarterback or not? Because we can do the bit where we say, well, it just doesn't make sense, or like Lamar's being unreasonable. You can say whatever you want to say. The penalty on the flip side of not having a quarterback or a stable quarterback situation is hell. And it's not just not having, as you take a step beyond that. Even if you have a I've keep people like this week talk about bridge quarterbacks. Like, who would be your bridge quarterback?
I've heard about it today. Like Derek Carr, Jacoby Brissett, like
Geno Smith, any of these guys.
Right.
They are exactly good enough for you to win enough games to not draft your next quarterback. Like, they're
you go 9-8. You might squeeze in the playoffs and get beat like the Seahawks.
That's exactly what the Seahawks did. The Seahawks had a bridge quarterback who was perfectly good enough for them to have a problem. Like, it did nothing for them to have a solid
You're better off just going 3-17, 3-14.
1,000% better.
Just 3-14 and go draft somebody.
There's no
Which, by the
comparison.
way, if you are the Ravens doing this, there really aren't that many teams that you can make this deal with because of the fact that they're not going to draft in a high enough spot. The Texans are clearly the one team that you could go to and say, hey, let's make this work.
Right.
Sean Payton coming in there. Sean, you want Lamar? No problem. Give us 3 number ones. Give us the one you're taking this year, right? Now, if you now when you get that kind of now when you get that deal on your plate, then you sit down and you really start evaluating and you say, okay, what do we want to do this? Do we want to give this quarterback away? Not give him away, but you know what I mean. Do we want to let this quarterback go to Houston? And do we want these 3 picks and 3 more?
Feel
and
so
whatever.
strongly about whoever that quarterback would be that you're
Stroud
taking
or whoever
there.
it is, right?
Correct.
So it does limit who you can make a deal with and how you can replenish your quarterback spot right away. It does limit you a little bit because there aren't that many teams in the top, say, 6 who have enough picks that would warrant you making a deal with them.
Which, of course, fundamentally goes back to the question of, is that the trade-off that's worth it for you to save face and say that you're the team that didn't go fully guaranteed? Which, again, we're prefacing it on the idea that we think that that's what this comes down to, whereas I have been told a few times it's not that black and white.
And I would say, and again, like I hear the same thing. I mean, I hear this over and over from them. If Lamar comes in and takes X, they want to pay him. They want to sign him. The only issue is they're not going to give him a guaranteed contract.
And that, it creates 2 separate problems.
But if he just walks in today and says, and I'm just making up this number.
Right.
If he just walks in today and says, "Hey, I'll take $218 million and give me $167 million of it guaranteed, and give me something," the Ravens would say, when you want the press conference.
The irony of that being, one, I have been, like, in the minimal reporting I've done, I've been told that Lamar would be willing to do that it's not fully guaranteed or nothing. It's not as black and white as people are portraying it to be. That it's just the number that was out there, the 133, it wasn't going to be that, right?
And that's fair, right? Maybe the number, maybe it's 170, right? Whatever the number is. And so much of this is and I always say this, about when people are complaining about the team and this not happen. I had a friend of mine last week. I wrote about this last week where a friend of mine said, biggest problem with Harbaugh sucks. Biggest problem with Harbaugh is he never corrects any of the mistakes in practices. They make these mistakes in the games, and then they don't correct them in the practices. And I said to my friend, I'm like, well, that's interesting. How many of the practices have you been to?
Correct, yes. Yes.
What
do you know about?
I've never been to any. Okay. Well, you're
just talking out of your ass.
Just stop talking.
Yes.
So the same sort of goes for this. And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful to any of the people that report on this stuff, whether or not it's all the mainstays, Schefter or Rappaport or whomever they are. But unless you're getting that information directly from one of 2 people, Lamar
or Eric DeCosta.
Or Eric, or maybe Pat Moriarty, because Pat, once the numbers start getting thrown around, Pat would be involved. But if you're not getting the information directly from them, then you're not 100% sure you're getting the right information.
And I would go a secondary part, unless you're getting it from both of them. I think that's been one of the things that I have been quick to try to criticize about, specifically the reporting about Lamar's injury, that there was one place where it was all coming from. Everybody was getting their reporting, whatever they were doing, they weren't getting it from Lamar. They were getting it from one side of the equation. Now, which isn't to say that it's not relevant, right? Like, it's relevant.
Right.
But there's an awful lot of comfortable things that were being thrown around without there being another side to the equation. Like, that there's...
You got to be you got to be talking. You have to get the information from the source. And, again, neither one of them...
Yes.
It doesn't behoove either one of them to give out any of the information, right?
And one has historically been more difficult to get information from.
And this is where I would say of all of the things that have happened, that the one mistake that Lamar has made, to me, without any question, is the absence of an agent. That's the one mistake he's made. That this process, to me, would have gone a lot better overall if Lamar would have had an agent.
I am inclined to agree with it. It's pointed out whenever you bring that up. But, hey, if he had an agent, that agent probably would have been in a rush to get a deal done around the time that Josh Allen did, and would have ultimately left money on the table in the process, right? Like, there's always a flip.
Maybe, but we wouldn't be going through this.
There's that.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be going through this. And I think an agent and and this is the thing too. Like, this is where the team, and I did this. I did this exact. We didn't pay our players $200 million. But I did. But
you didn't pay him $200 million.
But I dealt with, and I'll even tell you.
Not even Billy Ronson.
So I'll tell you, like, Timmy Whitman never had an agent. So when I sat down and talked to Timmy, it was just Timmy and I.
Right.
And I'll use Billy Ronson as an example. Billy Ronson used a guy in Baltimore named Ben Neal. And it was way easier for me to talk to Ben about Billy's the good and the bad of Billy than it was for me to talk to Timmy. It's just easier. I could say to Ben,
right.
Ben, I got to tell you, you think Billy's worth X.
Right.
I got to tell you.
Right, of course.
Billy didn't have the kind of season. By the way, rest in peace, Billy Ronson. But Billy didn't have the kind of season that you think he had. It wasn't easier for me to say that to Timmy.
Sure.
So, Eric, it's not easy for Eric to say to Lamar, whether or not it's by text or by phone or in person, it's not easy for Eric to say to Lamar, bro, you haven't played in December in 2 years. Let's just cut to the chase. Like, we're nervous. You haven't played in the games that have mattered to us. Whereas he could say that to an agent.
Right.
And whether or not you think Eric's right or wrong for saying that, it's neither here nor there. All I'm saying is it's very difficult to have an honest conversation with a player that you want, that you covet, that you want in good spirit. It's hard to do that.
And it's not that Henneman just wandered in. Legends in our presence this morning.
And it's not that hard to do with an agent. It's just not. You can have a much more open, direct conversation with an agent, and you know.
I agree.
I know because I did it, but
right.
But you also know that the agent is also going back to the player and telling him.
This is what they're saying, but it's not coming from you. It's not as awkward as coming from you directly.
So I would say in all of these things, this is where, and again, I'll use Roquan Smith as an example as a sidebar to this. I would say that Roquan Smith cost himself $20 or $30 million, but it might not matter to him.
Yeah,
but I would say that Roquan totally went about it the wrong way, but he might not care. Like, he should have said to the Ravens at the end of the year, "I want to be back here. I want you to know that right away.
Right.
But
let me go find out everything. Right.
But let me go wander around for 3 weeks.
But presumably,
and the Ravens aren't going to say to Roquan for sure, and he should have known this because they weren't going to say to him, "Dude, you got 1 week."
But Roquan was at a part where he didn't know that for sure that he could, right? And it's an awkward spot, right? Because he probably in his mind he says, "Well, you got to use the tag on Lamar, so you're not going to be able to use the tag on me, so I can become
just
a free
agent.
agent."
Just give me 2 weeks. And I'm going to walk around and I'm going to call people. And, hey, Packers, how's it going? Good. What are you looking for? I'm looking for 110. We'll give you 110.
Right.
No problem.
Right.
Hey, Falcons, what's going on? Hey, what are you looking for? 120. We'll give you 120.
But
he could come
on
back
the flip
to the Ravens.
side, if they get a deal done with Lamar, then they're going to prevent him from doing that because they're going to put the tag on him, right? Like
that's why you do it quickly. And the season ends and you're on the horn. But anyway,
sure,
but I'm saying
I think,
again,
I think we all know that's happening anyway. Like, I think we know that.
Well, it's not happening with him because he signed already.
Well, but I think
right.
It's not. Roquan has someone he works with. It's not an agent, but he has someone he works with. I think we know that person already done their work to figure out what the market was. Like, how many teams are there that are willing to give you that amount of money? We got to grab a break here. I do want to play Would You Rather Wednesday when we come back in.
Good.
Okay, we don't have to do that if we don't want to. I don't care. What the hell do I care? I have
no
no
idea. Are we
idea.
going to argue about something or not?
We can argue. The only thing that you and I are really going to argue about is the fully guaranteed thing, that you think it matters. Like, it just doesn't. It's so irrelevant. It's so quarterbacks always
they're not giving it to him.
And it's just It's just
Right.
dumb. Like, by the way, I don't think they have to necessarily, but there's no reason. It's insane if that's the reason why you let your quarterback walk. If you become the first team ever to lose a franchise level quarterback because you're afraid of 2 words that you're going to pay anyway, that you have to be criticized for that. You have to be beat up over the words themselves because you're giving Lamar Jackson all of that money if you're giving him a contract. Whatever the contract is.
Once you give him that, you have no leverage.
Leverage for what?
Leverage for anything, performance, anything.
You're
no
not going to
leverage.
have that leverage anyway. You know how these contracts are built. It is poison to threaten to release a quarterback because their cap hits are so damning that you can't do it.
But you cannot get into a situation where you have no leverage at all.
But you're not going to have leverage
Sure
doing
you
it
do.
the other way.
Sure
What
you
do
do.
you think the leverage is?
That you don't have to pay him $250 million if he keeps doing this every December.
You do. You can't get rid of
No,
them.
you don't.
Drew, you
Not
know,
at all.
You know, I know you're not this dumb. You know how quarterback contracts work. You can't release them. You can't do it. You would be putting your team through hell.
But you don't have to pay. Sure, but you're going to put your team through hell if you give him $45 million or $50 million this year. Like if you have to franchise him. If you franchise him, you're coming back with
it's
mainly the same
that's
team.
Disastrous,
Right.
100% to play on the franchise tag.
Right.
There's no doubt to do that. But the notion that it's any different between fully guaranteed and not fully guaranteed simply isn't true. Like you're going to have to pay the guy all of the money because you can't afford to get out from underneath it. Russell Wilson stinks, and there's nothing the Broncos can do about it because and he's not fully guaranteed. But that's the way
Russell Wilson stinks?
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard. Like, he's not any good.
When did that happen?
Yeah, I know, really weird. That's how the
We're going
contracts
to take their
work.
offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's true. The dead space in the contract, the dead hit on your cap is so damning that you're effed. You can't get out from underneath it. There is no leverage.
I would agree with that. But there's leverage that says if you don't perform, you won't get the money. There is leverage there.
But they know that's not true because they know you can't be released. Like, they know.
I think you're wrong on that. Now, I will agree that the team knows if we let him go and it impacts our cap, we're going to pay him $21 million this year, and he's not here.
More than that.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying however they work the numbers. But
it's poison.
Okay, but you can say to him after the second year, you're not playing in December, we're letting you go, and he doesn't get the money. And you've lost all of that ability.
But everybody knows within football you can't do that.
You can do it. No, you're just not gonna. Your argument is it's gonna crush your cap. So
it's not just going to crush your cap. It's going to make it so that you can't have a team. Like,
I don't know about that.
You can't do anything.
We could always go back and get Flacco.
You could do that. Next year, the Russell Wilson's dead cap space.
$40 million.
No, you wish. $107 million.
If you cut him.
If you get rid of him,
I love it.
$107 million. That's called fully guaranteed.
I love it.
You can pretend like the contract isn't fully guaranteed because it doesn't say the words
fully
fully
total
guaranteed.
deal?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Like 160 or something?
That sounds right? It was something like that. But that's a full guarantee.
Should have given him 200.
You can't get rid of Russell Wilson. It's fully guaranteed. It just doesn't say it's fully guaranteed.
All right.
To lose a quarterback over these words is insanity.
Well,
Like,
but he does have to play in December. It's also insanity.
Don't get
He
me
doesn't
wrong.
play.
I want him to play in December.
Right.
Like, I understand.
Right.
And if they know he's got a degenerative hip or something like that, I get it. Move on. But to move on, I don't think he does. I want to make that abundantly clear. I'm just saying that there are reasons why you would move on. Or if he said to you, I'm not going to play here. Like, there are reasons why you would move on from him. But to lose your quarterback
Put
over
that on
these
Twitter real quick.
Sure.
Glenn Clark.
It says he's got a degenerative
Glenn
hip.
Clark.
Yeah, right. If to lose
I did that once. I made up a story once. It was on ESPN.
Yeah, how'd that go for you, right? To lose your quarterback over those words when the words are meaningless. The only difference is, John Colson tried to remind me yesterday, is you got to put all the money in escrow up front. Like, that's it. That's the entire difference of the scenario.
I do wonder, too.
It's a far bigger problem if you're just cash poor and can't do it.
I do wonder if that's an issue also. Like,
no, it's
I've
fine, but it's a big problem.
I've never had
it is.
$250 million, so I don't know what it's like.
It's a far bigger problem.
But when they say, oh, by the way, you just signed him for $250 million, when's it going in the account? You're like,
Right.
well, I only got to give him $21 million next year.
No. This is the way it
Yeah,
works,
right.
right? Like, it's
So
all,
I do wonder about that. Like,
I certainly
know there
understand
are
not
banks-
wanting to do it.
I know there
Like,
are banks around who
yes,
would do
they
that
would
for
take
you
it,
for
yes, correct.
a little
Yes.
piece of the action.
Yes.
But that's interesting too. Like,
I get why you don't like it, but
and
again,
then the other thing from Steve's standpoint is, and I realize if you had a press conference and you ask Steve this question, he's probably not going to answer it. But hey, Steve, how long do you think you're going to own the team? Like
this
how much longer do you think you're
we
going
had
to own the
a
team?
very interesting off-the-air conversation about this yesterday.
How much longer do you
Right.
think you're going to own the team? Because
Right. Right.
if you're thinking in the next year or two that you might want to sell it,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to sell it with the quarterback in tow and the $250 million you owe him,
Mm-hmm.
or do you want to be able to say to the new owner, you're not really incurring any future debt?
Yeah,
Now,
but
there
you
are
also don't have a quarterback,
right? But I mean, there are always going to be future debt contracts. You got
Right.
the coach under contract.
Yes.
You got plenty of guys under contract, but none of them are to the tune of this.
Yes, but you're going to pay you're paying the money on the salary cap every year, no matter who you're paying.
Oh,
it
sure,
to,
sure, sure.
Right?
I
Like,
mean,
the worst case scenario is you have to be what the Jaguars were for years, and you just have to give your own players that aren't good enough more money in order to get the salary floor because you couldn't
Right.
sign anybody. Like that's the bigger problem is that you end up giving the money out in bad ways. That you
by the
go
way, I
that
think the
route.
Ravens are playing in England next year, don't
A
you?
lot of people think that.
Titans is the rumor.
It seems like that could end up being the case. Well, it went so well for them last time. Why wouldn't they want to go
Yeah, I
back?
mean, if I'm John, I'm probably going to say to the guys, there'll be a few things we're going to do different this time.
Maybe you think that's the case. All right, when we come back in,
I got to clarify. It was 160 guaranteed for Russell.
Russell, what was
Wilson.
the total
It was
value?
240 with a 5-year extension.
Nice. I
And-
think the Broncos were thrilled with that.
and again, it ain't fully guaranteed,
I think the Broncos
but it's
are,
sure as hell fully
so
guaranteed.
therein lies an issue too, right? Like if you're the Ravens, and do you? And I'm not saying they do. I'm asking. Do you put any stock in those sort of circumstances?
It was brought up by Brian.
where-
earlier. This is the first time there's ever been this type of issue, right? It's the first time where you've ever seen a deal like this.
And this is not that dissimilar to what Peter might have what might have happened with Peter Angelos in the years when he wouldn't spend any money, and some team would sign a guy for $100 million. A.J. Burnett would sign for $100 million, and the Yankees would cut him in 3 years and still owe him 60. And Peter would say, "I'm not doing that."
But what was the trade-off for that? You didn't have any
They were
players.
terrible,
That's
right.
I mean, like
Right,
that's
right,
what this
right.
keeps coming back to.
So the
Like,
Chris
you-
Davis thing,
You can bring these things up, but what are you measuring it
no
against?
doubt, and there's the difference, right? The Yankees signed Jacoby Ellsbury. They gave him $120 million. He hit 211 and had 24 home runs,
Mm-hmm.
and his back blew out, and they wasted all that money. And so you know what the Yankees' answer to that was? We'll just go get somebody else.
Correct.
Whereas the Orioles gave Chris Davis $161 million.
And then they said we can
And-
never give anybody
Correct.
any money ever again.
Right.
Correct.
So when you're the Ravens now and you're faced with this dilemma, do these, and I'm not saying they should or they do, I'm asking, do these quarterbacks that have taken this big money and floundered, do they impact you at all?
But there's only one.
Well, for now.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I certainly you can say that you're worried about Kyler
I
Murray.
mean, Tom
I
Brady's
guess.
never earned any of his money.
Yeah, right. That son of a bitch. That guy's just been stealing money for a long time.
I'd love to see him here.
What is-
1 year.
What is wrong with you?
1 year.
What is wrong with you?
Let's just bring Brady in.
Just for the fun of it, just
1
just
year.
for fun. No, by the way, there's an argument in Arizona for doing that, right? There's a legitimate argument for we're worried about where this is going with Kyler Murray.
Just bring Brady in.
If you could somehow get the Bucs to agree to, like, you're either going to have no quarterback or you can have Kyler Murray, and we get a year of Tom Brady, then we can figure this out afterwards.
Right.
If I'm the Cardinals, I'd be inclined to try to think about a scenario like that. But,
you know he's playing somewhere next year.
oh, he's 1,000%. What the
Yeah,
hell
yeah,
is he
yeah.
going to do?
Right.
I think he's gonna
divorce his wife.
Right.
She's gone.
Jesus, he's
He's got nothing.
What, you going to go sit and call games on Fox?
Right.
Forget it.
Right.
Forget it. He's
Somebody
playing.
said the other day they were going to give him like $40 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's insane. It's
be the-
insane.
to-
Well, they were going to have him do other things, too. Like, he was going to have – it wasn't just the games.
Is shirt on
Did
or
you
off?
read the story about,
His
like –
shirt's got to be off the
I
whole
don't know.
time, right?
And he's getting close to 50.
Doesn't matter. Have you
off.
seen him?
Yes, I agree. Did you read the story about, like, Tony Romo's mailing it in? Like, he shows up
No.
for games now, and he hasn't even studied the defenses.
Okay,
Like,
'cause he's
getting $17 million a year, and he's just mailing
bored.
it in. Correct. He's not in.
He's like, this is too
Because
easy.
they told him he couldn't call out the plays anymore. And
Oh,
so
they did.
Like 2 years ago. They
I
told
didn't
him to
know
stop
that.
calling out the
Okay,
players.
because he knew
Yeah,
before the
right?
other teams
Like,
knew.
They told him to do that.
Right.
And so now he just sort of doesn't care anymore.
Who's winning this weekend?
I really don't know.
Oh, I do know.
No,
you
don't.
know who's
You're
winning. Well, you know
Oh,
who's winning in the AFC.
Cincinnati?
Of course.
Yeah, I don't know.
And it might be the same way they just beat Buffalo.
Might be. It
They-
might be.
They might
I
beat
know.
them 30
I hear
to
you.
17.
I hear you. All right. I got to get a break because Vinnie Iyer is going to join us in a few minutes, talk some draft. I don't know what you're doing. Are you
Draft?
Yes. I don't know.
It's
if you heard.
January the 25th.
I understand that, Drew. The season's over. Like,
Well, I'm not talking about the draft.
okay, that will you can. I'm not going to tell you what to do
Talking
wherever
about
you
golf.
do it. Yeah,
Get the
that's-
leaderboard
yeah,
up.
exactly right.
Get the
You wanna
leaderboard
talk
up.
about the
Come on,
the
man. We're not talking about the draft.
Jim Nance is sitting in Kansas City. Well, you can leave. I tell you what, we'll do
No,
Would You
I'll be
Rather
here.
Wednesday now.
I'll stick around. I'm getting paid through noon. I'll
Yeah,
stay.
that's right. Gambling can be fun, but you should set a limit
What?
and stay within.
What?
You should listen. You should set a limit and stay within it. Remember, if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. All right, let's do Would You Rather Wednesday, then we'll take a break and talk to Vinnie Iyer after that. Scenarios are up, facebook.com/Glenn Clark Radio or at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter for Would You Rather Wednesday. Number one, would you rather the next Ravens offense coordinator is someone with serious experience, like, say, Frank Reich, who
Okay.
apparently they're interested in, according to Jeremy Fowler, or one of these young, hotshot up-and-comers with maybe some new and fresh ideas, like a Chad O'Shea or a Zach Robinson?
I think I'm good with a new guy.
Okay.
I do. And no disrespect to Frank Reich. I think I'm okay with one of these new guys. I bring them in, give them their, they come in, they're hungry, they're eager. Maybe they got some fresh ideas. Are they going to make a mistake or two? Sure. It doesn't matter who we hire anyway. We're going to hate him in 3 years. It doesn't matter if it's Frank Reich. It doesn't matter who it is. We're hating him. As sure as the sun rises in the east every day,
you're not going to get me.
we're hating him.
If we can argue about anything else.
No,
You're not going to get me to argue about that.
We are hating the
That's
offensive
the way
coordinator.
It works.
It doesn't matter who we get. We're chasing him out of town.
For a season, we might be okay with.
Oh,
it.
yeah,
For
yeah.
one season.
First year,
And by the way,
they get a free,
that might be why it makes sense for Frank Reich.
and
come for a
but the
year,
first
do
year
the Gary
they get
Kubiak
It's
thing.
like I wrote this last week. This
Right.
is not that different than what's going on with Kevin Willard.
Right.
Maryland has played. There have been 5 halves of Maryland basketball this year that have been arguably the worst halves of Maryland basketball in 20 years. That have been horrendous.
Okay.
And if that were the former guy,
Mm-hmm.
he would be getting absolutely filleted. And no one said a word about Willard, but that's the way it goes. But if this happens next year, then it's going to start to get a little different. And by the third year, we want him fired.
I don't
too.
think it's quite apples to apples, but I get what you're saying.
close.
I get what you're saying.
So the first year, this guy's going to come in next year.
I think you're ignoring that. Like, I still think that he's getting more out of this group than could be reasonably
Well,
expected.
that's
Part
fine.
of it,
But
right?
some of these performances have been
Well,
horrendous.
Like the first halves, for the most part, have been
horrendous.
disastrous. Yes.
So, but if the new guy comes in next year and they open with the Colts at home and we win 31-13, right away everybody's going to go, "Up, we got our guy."
We
And
love-
if the next week they play the Browns and 34-20, we got our guy.
Right.
And it'll be that way until week 11 when they play the Steelers and they lose
we
16-10.
worshipped at the
and
altar
then-
of Gary Kubiak
Right.
for one season, and then
Right.
if he'd come back the next year, for sure, we would have hated it.
No doubt.
That's the way it would
Oh,
have
yeah,
gone.
yeah. That's I would say, but give me the
Give
young
you
guy.
the young guy, Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Drew. I mean, like,
It's
course
going to
you
be
are.
the
Of course.
classic
I mean, look
error
at-
on
look
your
at-
Of course
part.
you are.
Yeah.
look at Mike McDonald. I mean, look at Mike McDonald. Like, everyone was after the Dolphins collapse. Like, I feel like we're gonna hate the guy for it's gonna probably on a weekly basis, just depending on what happens. So I think
Someone has to get the blame.
That's the way it works. The only argument I make to the flip side, I'm surprised nobody's made this argument, is I'm going to root for it to be because Frank Reich isn't taking this job if he doesn't know that Lamar Jackson is going to be his quarterback. Frank Reich is not.
I wrote that
coming-
last week too.
He's
Like,
not.
There's
coming
no veteran
here.
offensive coordinator
Correct.
taking the job
So
if you don't think Lamar's
if
coming.
Frank Reich gets the job, it makes me feel like that's settled. Like
or
they
Byron Leftwich.
they know. Byron Leftwich's never been he's not. He's in that.
Right.
He's in that ilk, I guess. But those guys aren't taking this job if they don't know. The young guys, to your point, they don't really care. They just want a job, right?
New house, $1 million.
So, given the uniqueness of the circumstances,
Is it fully guaranteed?
In a typical scenario, I would agree with you. But given the uniqueness of this scenario, I'm going to say Frank Reich because I only think he takes the job if he knows that Lamar Jackson's sticking around.
1,000,000% agree.
And that solves a problem for me if it ends up being
1,000,000% agree.
Number 2, would you rather? For the next 5 years, you trade players and coaches, everything personnel-wise, players and coaches, with the Kansas City Chiefs or with the Cincinnati Bengals?
Man.
Yeah. This is where you give me credit.
This
You
is-
say, "Hey, man, that's really
Yeah,
good.
that's
That's a good one. You're doing
This is what Harbaugh
good.
does. That's
Yeah,
a good question.
Right.
When you don't want to answer it. Man, this is close because they've got, they all have the Chiefs don't have the wide receivers that
No.
the Bengals have. But the tight end's really good.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard. I said yesterday I might be leaning towards.
I think the jury's out on Zach Taylor. I've followed it enough to really know. I mean, Reed. If they win this Super Bowl this year, the Chiefs, and maybe win one more with Mahomes, like Reed could go down as a top 5 coach in the history of the league.
It's an argument, absolutely.
And people don't put a lot of stock in this, but it does matter. And this is where Belichick, even though a lot of Belichick's guys haven't had an inordinate amount of success, like the coaching tree matters. So Andy Reid will have a couple of Super Bowls, and so will John Harbaugh, right? Like, I don't know, man, because I don't know enough about Zach Taylor. I think Burrow is clearly a star.
He's the second or third best quarterback in football.
No doubt. I mean, could be an argument he's second.
Yes, absolutely.
This kid in Kansas City is
right.
incredible.
Right.
So it's a great question. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I think the Bengals have better helmets.
You do have that, but you're not getting that. Remember, you're trading.
You
They're
don't
all
get
going to be
the
wearing.
helmets?
They're all going to be wearing purple. They're all going to be wearing purple.
Yeah, our helmets are terrible.
I understand
They're
that.
the
How do they
worst-
ever win? Come on,
They're
we
the
got to
worst
get to
colors.
it.
Give me the Bengals.
All right.
I guess I'll say Chiefs. I Patrick Mahomes, assuming Travis Kelce can stay Travis Kelce for 5 years.
Part of this is I'm so tired of the insurance commercials.
Okay.
Like, I'm just so,
I don't know, dude.
I'm so fed up with
every
them.
time Andy Reid says I'm going to get to the bottom of this, I pop.
I know.
It's so good.
But the Bengals
so
receivers
good.
are really good, so I mean it's
No, but
it's a tough
here's
one.
the best argument that was made by someone was
They're winning the Super Bowl, by the way.
the best argument that was made was we've already seen the Chiefs have been the first team to ever prove that they can do it with moving on from their wide receivers.
Right.
That's the answer. Like for 5 years that at some point the
When
Bengals
they got rid of Tyreek Hill this summer, I was
Right.
like, you guys
Yeah.
are insane.
Correct. The Bengals they won't be able to pay all 3 of these guys that
No
type
doubt.
of money.
Right.
So the question is it the same thing? What we talk about is the totality of it. Like it's overwhelming when they have all 3 of those dudes on the field at the same time. But if they can't keep that moving forward, if they have to make choices, do we know with certainty that it's the exact same?
Right.
We know with certainty it's the exact same in Kansas City because it's already been proven. I thought that was a quality argument, and that flipped me because I started on the Bengals. That flipped me over.
I just
the
went with
Chiefs.
the helmets.
All right, and then finally, this I don't know if you saw the story yesterday. You go back to your mid to late 20s. All right, you got a buddy. Your buddy says your best friend says, "Drew, I want you to meet the person that I'm dating."
Okay.
They're also same age, mid to late 20s.
Okay.
You either find out the person that they're dating is between the ages of 45 and 54, and now is going to be palling around with you, or you find out the person they're dating is a 23-year-old who, for medical reasons, looks and talks exactly like an 8-year-old. This is a story that popped up in the New York Post yesterday about a popular social media person who is dating a gal who had a medical incident related to cancer treatment, who is 23 years old, but looks and talks exactly like an 8-year-old.
I'm pretty sure this is going to fall under the bias thing that I just passed at Odyssey
Yeah, right.
yesterday at 105.7. Oh, boy. What's the net worth of the 45-year-old?
Not notable enough to make a difference.
Oh, man. I don't know. I think I might have to go with the 45-year-old.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I had a
I
scenario
think
where a buddy of my age was dating a woman in her. I would bring up another scenario. I won't bring that up. But I had another buddy who was dating a woman that was very much the mother of people that were our age.
I could make that work, I think.
I don't know, man. It was very
I'll figure it
uncomfortable. We just didn't
I'll
see
just
him.
pretend you're.
It was just over. You weren't going to see him any longer.
Right.
Like, they were doing other things.
I can't.
They didn't want to come over.
I'm thinking of the 8-year-old thing, and it brings back the Big Lebowski. 8-year-old.
It's very
8-year-olds,
yeah, right.
dude.
8-year-olds. That's a great point. That's a great point. But she is 23.
I know, but
she's 23.
she sounds like she's 8.
Her life
That wouldn't
experience
work.
is like other
It'd have to be-
23-year-olds.
it'd have to
She
be-
would probably come over and smoke weed and play video games with you and your buddies.
An 8-year-old?
She's not 8, Griffin.
She would be. She's
She's
8.
not
She's
8.
23.
She's 23.
She
You
would be
have to
8.
be able to have this conversation. She's not 8.
Yeah,
she's
but she'd
23.
Be 8. She'd be 8.
No.
Though.
Oh God.
She would be
This is
8.
She's not.
8-year-olds, dude.
All right. Can we take a break, please?
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
so far behind. Well, grab a break. Continue to get me your responses at Glenn Clark Radio. Vinnie Iyer joins us next. We'll talk some NFL draft with him. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our annual Best Of issue. On the cover, we recognize Orioles catcher Adley Rutschman as our 2022 Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, and he sits down with us to discuss how his arrival in Baltimore was simultaneous with the Birds' turnaround. Also inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of the year throughout the local sports scene. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The Baltimore County Police Department is hiring. Entry-level officers start at over $60,000 and over $64,000 for lateral officers, with $10,000 signing bonuses available. Plus, cadets start at over $32,000. Great benefits are available like medical, dental, and vision insurance, tuition reimbursement, 15 sick days per calendar year with no limit, career advancement to more than 20 specialized units, and more, with further incentives for military service members and veterans. A passion for service, a career for life with the Baltimore County Police Department. Find out more at joinbaltimorecountypd.com or call 410-887-5542. Must be a United States citizen, have a valid driver's license, and a high school diploma or GED equivalent.
Check out Jeremy Kahn's daily picks at PressBoxOnline.com as he tries to find you daily winners. And speaking of winners, here's a man who once won a media curling contest, and I don't think anything else. He's Glenn Clark.
Win that.
No, I did. We won.
You did, but the people.
And
I
carried it.
The guys you
I
were playing
carried
against were highly unathletic.
And what were we? I think it was a pretty even competition.
Well, that's true.
All things being
I didn't think
equal.
of that.
Yeah, exactly right. But I do like it sounded like you backhanded.
By the
me.
way, this cup I'm drinking out of, is these cameras on?
Yeah.
This is not an endorsement for this product. It's water. You
Well,
can see
they're
it's-
doing that at the
You can see it's-
ballpark now, right? Like they're going to be all. Are they going to be all Pepsi at the ballpark moving forward?
Oh, are they?
I think
don't
that's
know.
what I
It's
saw.
not
I
an
think that's
endorsement
what
of
I
this
saw.
product.
Today's show also brought to you by PressBoxOnline.com/offers. I got a deal for you. If you have not signed up for DraftKings yet, this is the time to do it. Go to PressBoxOnline.com/offers right now. Click on the DraftKings link, and when you do, if you are signing up for the first time, and it's very important, it's got to be signing up for the first time. So maybe if you've signed up, but say Mrs. Forrester
What's
hasn't signed up.
DraftKings?
Yeah, you would never know that. Right? It's legal now. You don't have to pretend.
Oh, okay.
New players, if you bet just $5, you'll win $150 if either quarterback throws for more than a single yard. in the Chiefs-Bengals game.
How funny would it be if they both throw for 0?
Right, correct. They both get knocked out on the first play. Either quarterback throws for more than 1 yard, you're getting $150 on a $5 bet. But you got to go to PressBoxOnline.com/offers in order to sign up and take advantage of this for Sunday in the championship game. Drew Forrester is here. This is our first NFL draft segment of the year. We'll be doing these every week. We'll be talking NFL draft. First up, man who's covered the NFL for a long time. He's got a mock draft up right now. At the Sporting News, he is our buddy Vinnie Iyer, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Vinnie, it's Glenn and Drew. It's always great to catch up. Thank you for taking the time for us, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Vinnie, before we get into the draft, how difficult is it to do a mock draft for the Baltimore Ravens when you're not 100% certain exactly what the quarterback situation is going to look like?
Yeah, that is a challenge, but that's a challenge when you do mock drafts at this time of year, free agency and all those things that you're trying to navigate through at this point. So it's just a projection. It's evolving always in terms of what their needs are, what their direction might be, what players they're interested in. We haven't even had the Senior Bowl, so that's going to change some things as well for all the teams on their board. So, again, it's just trying to figure out, try to get in the heads of Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh. What would they do right now? You have to say Lamar is in the mix, but that could quickly change here.
Before we get to who you do have the Ravens selecting at 23 and some other things related to your draft, do you have a gut about how all this is going to end up playing out? Like, do you have, hey, look, man, it's, this is all going crazy right now, but I do think they get it worked out, or like we're beyond that point? Do you have a gut instinct about how this is all going to play out?
I think I'm at 50-50 right now. I really am. I just think they could end up giving the contract that Jackson would want over the long term, and the Deshaun Watson contract from last year complicates things, not just for Lamar, but the other contracts going forward, including Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So it's just very unique. I wonder if we're going in the direction of quarterbacks demanding all guaranteed money in their contracts, and that could change things as well. So I know there will be some teams out there that will do that for Lamar Jackson. So the Ravens have to decide, are they one of those teams that want to just completely break the bank and make sure that he's got all the money in his contract for sure in his pocket. So it's going to be interesting to watch, and we'll see if they give in to what the market says.
All right.
Hey, Vinny, when you look at the Ravens, and I'm assuming in their defensive backfield, Peters will be gone, and if nothing else, maybe they rework him, and he spends a year sort of almost as a mentor. But the cornerback position for me is a place I really think, given where they're picking, I think cornerback is a spot that they may look really closely at in that first round. Any chance, and maybe the first three are Ringo and Smith and the kid from Clemson, Simpson. Is there any way any of those guys can fall back far enough for the Ravens to pick them? I know there are a lot of moving parts between now and April, but particularly, let's say the kid from South Carolina that I know a lot of people are high on, Cam Smith. Anybody jump out at you that could fall back?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just the way things might play out with the teams taking quarterbacks early, that could open things up here for the Ravens. Of course, they might also need a quarterback. And
right.
Need to think about that at the end of the first round. So that is something definitely to look out for. But there's a couple guys that I like that are borderline first rounders for me right now. I think you look at the kid from Utah, Clark Phillips. I think he's a really good stride corner prospect. And Oregon, you also have Christian Gonzalez. So there's some guys there that you can look at that can be effective there late in the round that have some nice size here in the draft. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out between the values there in the late first round. But corner always seems to be on the table and usually is a good pick late in the first round. I think the Ravens have also, we know, had some success with the pass rushers, taking them in this range as well. So But right now, as you guys have probably seen that I have them going with the wide receiver, and that could also be tied to the changing direction of the offense as well.
He is Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. He's with us here on GCR. Before we get to wide receiver and what you're doing, like Drew, you know the most delicious scenario that could play out here. The thing that would be the best for all of us involved is Joey Porter Jr.
No.
Oh, my God.
No.
Could you imagine?
I was just going to say that. I was going to say that to Vinny. Like, it would be great to get Joey Porter Jr., but we're not allowed.
Yeah, correct. That's right. Like, it would be the most electric thing that could possibly happen in the course of this draft.
One of the most hated opposing players of all time brings his son here.
Oh, my God. What unbelievable story that would be. Vinny, to your point, you do have the Ravens going wide receiver. Before we get to your guy, one of the things that jumped out at me—
That makes us nervous, too.
Yeah, correct. One of the things that jumped out at me about your draft is I think a lot of Ravens fans, like Drew brought up with the cornerback position, are hoping that one of these, Addisons or Smith and Jigbas, one of these other wide receivers, the same way that we've seen in recent years, that wide receiver, for whatever reason, despite it being, we all know that it's, maybe the second most valuable position on the football field, it seems like in the draft, teams have kind of pushed guys down a little bit. You seem to have most of those guys going all in the top 20. Are you convinced that these receivers, the Addisons, the Smith-Jigbas, the Robinsons of the world, are definitely top 20 guys that won't be available as we get to where the Ravens are sitting at 23?
It's hard because you look at the pedigree of some of these guys, and also Ohio State. I mean, we didn't have any disappointment from Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, so if you tap into that system, you feel pretty confident. Obviously, going back to LSU and Keyshawn Booth with the way Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase have come out of that kind of system, where I know it was a little bit different back then, but teams feel comfortable, right, with that. Just like a program that continues to produce linebackers or edge rushers, you start to feel comfortable that the product that you're getting there is going to be close to finished and have an immediate impact. So I think the wide receiver draft is very interesting. I think some teams can get into trouble by locking into a certain style of player. The one draft that sticks out to me of late was the Cardinals taking Andy Isabella over DK Metcalf. Sometimes you just think too much. Take the guy that has got the size, the speed, go after him. Don't try to go, okay, we need this type of slot inside receiver. Just go with the one that you like the most, because we know we can move around these receivers. I mean, no one is attached to outside or inside. I mean, Jefferson, the reason he slipped was everyone thought he was just a slot receiver, and he showed everyone that he's even better on the outside. So don't get caught up in where you might align them, opposite whom. Just go for someone to say, is this guy going to make big plays for me? And that's all you look at.
Yeah, you might have just answered this. My next question was going to be, in your history and your experience of covering these drafts and mock drafts and going to the Senior Bowls and all of these different things to look at these kids, is there a misnomer, or is there something? And again, you may have just answered it, but is there something about the draft that over the years you've kind of figured out, like, you guys are kind of doing this wrong, or the way you think it should be done has turned out to not really be the way you should do it? You guys ought to figure it out, better.
Well, I think one thing, and I'll go back to this big decision that was a couple of years ago, Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell for the Bengals. Now, if they had got Penei Sewell, would they be in the position they've been in the last few years? I doubt it.
Right.
So think about what your team is like, and think about the structure of the team. And I think teams are starting to do that. Like, I think the Eagles also are a great example. They said, okay, there's some connection with Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith, and then they realized, okay, there's some connection in the past between Hurts and A.J. Brown, going on a recruiting trail together and having that instant chemistry. So that's okay to do, to connect to college things that are working. It's okay to do that. Just don't worry about it too much. Again, we think that, okay, you need this offensive tackle at this spot, but if this is going to give you higher upside, you got to go for that. And if there's a familiarity, go for that as well. Don't try to get the square pegs and put them in the round holes. Fit them that and there's a track record that you can see succeeding right away.
Sounds like it's code word for tell the Ravens not to take wide receivers.
Well, with that said, Vinnie Iyer and your mock draft, you do indeed. And we've linked up Vinnie Iyer's mock draft at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter for you to go check it out. You do indeed have the Ravens going wide receiver in the first round. Some might say that the player that you have the Ravens taking is Booty, because it's Kayshon Boutte from LSU. So I ask you this question. Do you have the Ravens going here because you genuinely believe that Kayshon Boutte is a top 23 player in this draft, or is it because you're convinced the Ravens have to go wide receiver, and with the first few guys off the board, this is the next guy that's available at wide receiver?
Yeah, it's tough because I do like him. I like Quentin Johnston as well. I love the guys that are at the top here, Jordan Addison and Smith-Njigba. But when you look at this, this is kind of hedging my bets type of pick here, that he is kind of in that range to draft, number one. Number two, if the Ravens are in their current state, I think they really missed Marquise Hollywood-Brown a lot more than they would think, especially when you didn't have Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay available. There's nothing left at wide receiver. But they missed having that second guy to help Bateman. There wasn't a lot there early when we saw it. So they could use a number two. And then if they go in a different direction and Lamar Jackson's not the quarterback, you're going to have to start going back to having legitimate wide receivers and not go into this run-heavy approach from Mark Andrews and a little bit of Bateman are going to be enough for you in the passing game. So it was a combination of factors to go in that direction at this very moment for the Ravens.
Is there, of the other receivers specifically, is there one that you say, this is the guy that I'd be most rooting to be sitting there at 23 if I were the Baltimore Ravens? Of that, that group that you brought up, Johnston, throw in Smith-Njigba, throw in, Addison. Is there one guy that between practicality and best player you'd say, if I'm the Ravens, I'm rooting like hell that this is the guy that slips to 23?
Yeah, it's definitely got to be Smith-Njigba to me, because when he was on the field, I know we had a lot of buzz about Marvin Harrison Jr. I was going to be excited about him when he can get into the draft next year. But Smith-Njigba was just outstanding. And I look at Olave and Wilson. He was right up there with them to me. And again, having that track record of an offense that works, and Ryan Day has some good connections to the NFL in terms of producing. That's much like what we saw with Alabama defenders for many years under Nick Saban. There's a direct translation into the similar scheme in the NFL. Same thing with Ryan Day, that it works out really well. What I like about Smith-Njigba as well as Olave and Wilson is that you can move them around. They can do everything on the field, and that's what I like about these receivers there that are very versatile, and you saw that in the production of both Olave and Wilson really having great years for the Saints and the Jets.
I like, the funny thing is I like all three of them, right? Like I really like all three of those players. I don't want to take anything away from Kayshon Boutte. I like all three of those guys. I guess there's some world where the Ravens end up dipping their toes in the DeAndre Hopkins waters, but like if they don't, are you at a place where you say, this team is so desperate they should be looking to make a move? I'll go it this way. If Boutte was the guy that was sitting there at 23, would you say maybe it's worth moving up to make sure you get one of these other guys? Or do you really believe that if you end up getting Boutte at 23, you're in pretty much just as good of a spot as you would be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough call because, again, you have to really feel that there's a big difference between those receivers. And I'm not sure there is right now. We might discover that in the process, like we would go, like I think last year's a good example, right? You felt that there was a bit of a separation before you got to Treylon Burks, and the Titans were kind of put in a tough spot because they moved A.J. Brown and had to make a move to really get someone in the wide receiver core. So the biggest thing you want to avoid is being desperate in the draft. So, like, be okay with whoever falls to you. And a lot of teams fall in this trap where they want to play really badly or they just want to settle for a player. You got to kind of have to find the sweet spot between that. So I think that the Ravens have to obviously sort out a lot of different things before then. And one of the things also, if they move on from Lamar Jackson, do they go more reloading? Do they have to rebuild, knowing that they have to start again with a new quarterback? So there's a lot of tough decisions there, because if you're kind of rebuilding, then you can just go best player available, maybe not have the wide receiver now and get that wide receiver later in the draft. So all kinds of things they have to sort out. This is going to be a very tough offseason for the Ravens.
And I was going to leave you with that, Vinny. In this scenario where they've made a Lamar Jackson trade before we get to the NFL draft, presumably they're trying to get very early in the draft for a quarterback. I guess there's still a world in which they could be looking at the 23 range and Anthony Richardson. But where are you with this group of quarterbacks? Like, are you in love with a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud or somebody like that and saying, look, it's a bitter pill to swallow to give up Lamar Jackson, but if you do and you end up with one of those guys, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key. Is I'm not really sure about Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. Like, there are some things I like about them, but I could also see them being kind of developmental. Now, if you look at it and where the rumors are starting to swirl with this, would be the Falcons, and you'd presume you can do a situation where you could get the number 8 overall pick. That's actually a really good spot, especially if the Raiders kind of go elsewhere. Tom Brady, to solve quarterback, to jump ahead of Carolina, that spot at number 8, you'd be looking pretty good here. It just depends on what Indianapolis does at 4 and Houston does at 2. But then you'd also be in good position to trade up if you could get Stroud or Young. So that's something to think about, and maybe why the Falcons might be an appealing trading partner. We know, obviously, if they can make it happen with Houston, that would be really ideal.
Admittedly, I hope this is not a conversation that we're having. I don't care for it whatsoever. Sporting News, of course, is where you see all of his stuff, and you can follow Vinnie Iyer on Twitter as well by going at Vinnie Iyer. Vinny, is there anything I can plug for you, sir?
We're just previewing the championship games. No big deal. Split Smith is going to go on this weekend. Big games this weekend, so really excited about them. I think any of these 4 teams could win the Super Bowl. So breaking it down in full for you at sportingnews.com.
Very good.
Awesome.
Vinny, appreciate it as always, man. Thank you so much for taking the time for us.
All right. Thanks, guys.
It's Vinny Iyer, the Sporting News.
They better not take a wide receiver.
Okay, but let me go back to the DeAndre Hopkins thing for a second. Where are you with that?
You know, we had this conversation a couple weeks ago.
But we were doing it hypothetically with Would You Rather Wednesday. I mean, like more.
No, I mean, but it isn't. Like, I
Right.
think that the answer is like I just think you have to be really careful with these guys who, and I'm saying this about Hopkins, and I could be totally wrong about this, about his injury. I'm not even going to say he's injury prone because that very well might not even be the case. I'm just saying you have to be very careful about guys as they start to get into their 30s. You know, we did this list a couple weeks ago that they tend to kind of break down quickly. And I don't mean to pin all of it on just because Julio Jones went from totally chic to totally geek in 1 year, but like you just have to be careful. If the Cardinals are willing to pony up some of the money, which you kind of suspect they would be, maybe you can do it that way, right?
As Brian McFarland brought up earlier, you'd definitely be restructuring.
Right.
Like you'd be.
Do I think DeAndre Hopkins would be a nice addition to the Ravens? 100%. Would I? But would I treat him like he's the 26-year-old rock star that he was in Houston? I wouldn't. Because he isn't.
But you're doing the dangerous thing where you're saying, hey, don't draft a wide receiver.
I know.
Be wary of.
No, I mean,
you've got to have wide receiver.
Right. And I did say a couple weeks ago, and I think it has over time it's been bearing out this way. You go make a trade for one, and this is why you're talking about Hopkins.
Right.
Go make a trade for one. Your chances of success, particularly given what the Ravens have gone through, your chances of success are far greater, in my mind, than they would be if you drafted one. But the other issue with drafting one is they're a lot cheaper. You don't have to overpay for them because they're not
rookies.
getting $25 million
right.
a year or 15 or whatever the number is. So the short answer is I think the Hopkins thing would be fine, but I'm a little leery as they get to 31 and 32 that you might only get one really good year.
Most of the teams that drafted receivers early last year are feeling pretty good about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Pittsburgh kid turned out to be really good.
Christian Watson in Green Bay looks
right.
like a rock star. Obviously,
Yeah,
Olave and Garrett Wilson look like studs. I mean, Jahan Dotson maybe didn't put up the insane, but we all saw it. Like, we all saw, like, that dude is, in the Giants game, of course, was very capable of being special. Like I'm always I'm almost the exact opposite of you.
Okay.
Which is I know what you're saying. The Ravens are terrible
Just
at this.
pick 7 of them.
They always that's the exact. It's really where I am.
Just pick 7 of them.
Drafting wide receivers.
Just pick 7. All right, first round wide receiver. Second round, who you going with?
Wide receiver.
Who you going with?
Well, they don't have a
receiver.
second round pick, unfortunately,
We'll
so
get
that won't be an option. Yeah, probably.
But yeah, just keep picking wide receivers.
Wide
One
receivers. One of them
will work.
Receiver.
It's like playing a parlay in college basketball. A friend of mine said it's like playing a parlay in college
yes,
basketball.
well, you wouldn't.
You're
right.
always going to win
Again,
one of them.
It's legal now. I don't know why you keep missing that. It's okay.
I heard.
Well, I don't know. Are you allowed to? What's Calvert Hall's policy on that? I don't even know.
I don't bet on their games.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's smart.
I haven't seen those.
That's
I haven't
smart.
seen those lines.
Those
yet.
lines haven't been posted
Right.
anywhere for you to have to worry about. That's probably
I like
smart.
Maryland tonight.
Yeah, I like Maryland. For the
Maryland
most part, I
tonight.
like Maryland at home. Right? Like for the most part, there was no world where I would have bet them on Sunday, and obviously they would have covered.
Right.
But at home, I almost always like.
Yeah,
Maryland.
I do too. Yep.
What's
All right.
what is the number tonight?
5.5.
5.5.
think.
Is it? Wow.
Isn't it?
I mean, it's a bad spot
Yeah,
for
it's five-
Wisconsin,
it's
so I
five
do
and a
like
half.
Very bad.
Yeah,
spot
they had
for
to play
Wisconsin.
Sunday. They had to
They
travel
played
Monday.
Yeah.
They were supposed to play on Saturday. Had to play Monday. Coming here, yeah, I like Maryland tonight, which means they're going to lose 70 to
of course, right?
54.
Yeah, they're gonna get hammered, right? Hang on, I'm trying to pull it up to make sure I have the answer to what the line is. Give me the line for Maryland. All right, we'll do that in a
It was
second.
4.5 this morning.
Is it definitely still 5.5?
Well, I don't know. I got
Griffin just said it was 4.5.
This morning it was 4.5.
What do you have
It's
going on? What's
It's
going
up
on
to
in
5.
your world?
Up to
I
5.
got a 12:30 meeting I got to go to.
All right,
Make a living.
Drew's.
Continue to do
When did
this.
you start doing that?
Continue to have this fun.
Yeah, right. Drew'sMorningDish.com.
Next week we're going to talk about conscious and unconscious bias.
I think I'm going to pass on that conversation. And by the way, can we talk about all the names?
How about the one?
Nope.
Incident where
I don't want to do
the
it.
boss put his hand
Yeah.
on the girl's hand, and she said, "I was kind of uncomfortable with that." And the boss said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm just trying to make you feel more comfortable here."
Yeah.
And then the thing came up and said, "Was that inappropriate?" I'm like,
I don't know.
I'll take a wild guess and say yes.
Correct. I don't want to talk anymore about that. Not this weekend.
Okay.
The following
The
weekend.
Super Bowl weekend.
You're bringing back the golf show.
Yes.
Correct?
Not this. Oh yeah, the 5th. It's back on
Right.
the 5th. Yeah.
That's when Rita and I are back. That's the only reason why I know.
Oh, yeah, the 5th.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I'm excited.
I've already forgot. You're at noon?
I think so.
Bro.
12 to 1.
I am so my wife yesterday was trying to plan her kid's birthday party, which I said he went to Disney World.
Make it on a
we don't
Friday.
need we don't need a
make it
Did you ever
Friday.
take the kids to Disney World?
They went. I didn't.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Yeah.
You're so, but it was your money though.
Oh yeah, it was my money.
Yeah, you're not that lucky.
Right.
God,
Oh, I know.
what
You got to take out a second loan.
brother.
No doubt.
I am in.
No
It's
doubt.
a bad. You need anybody over at Drew'sMorningDish.com.
Yeah,
You talk to you. You need somebody to write about tennis. We'll talk about that. My God, it's a
I know.
nightmare.
All right. Have a good week.
See you, buddy. It's Drew Forrester, Drew'sMorningDish.com. Check in with us here on at GCR. Haven't picked up the print issue of Press Box yet. I don't know what you're waiting for. It is our best of 2022 issue. Our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Adley Rutschman, is on the cover. Go get it right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. Or read it all at PressBoxOnline.com/best-of. It is, as always, free to pick up. And there's only a couple more weeks on this one before the next issue of Press Box hits newsstands, so make sure you go get it now. We come back in with Tidbit and Tubular. I mean, I'll get to some of your responses for Would You Rather Wednesday as well, because we haven't really done that, but Tidbit and Tubular on the way. Glenn Clark Radio.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
Looking for some excitement in the new year? Laurel Park has plenty of live horse racing events to spice things up this January. The much-anticipated Winter Meet kicks off on January 1st, plus we've got special MLK Holiday Racing on Monday, January 16th, and the Winter Carnival Carnival Stakes on Saturday, January 21st. Winter may be cold, but the racing at Laurel Park is hot. Learn more about upcoming January events by visiting laurelpark.com.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
Another Orioles season is in the books, and the Bat-Around was there every step of the way as the Birds posted their first winning season in 6 years. And after promoting 2 #1 overall prospects in Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson, Mike Elias has said it's liftoff from here. Hi, I'm Paul Valley, and along with my co-host Zach Goodman, we'll be here every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon all off season, discussing every signing, trade, and waiver claim as we navigate the cold winter months that lead to spring training. You can watch us at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline and Facebook.com/PressBoxSports, or listen live at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. And if you miss a show, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. So tune into the Bat-Around with Paul Valley and Zach Goodman every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon right here at PressBox Sports.
It's the perfect time to sign the young basketball fan in your life up for a membership in the Retriever Kids Club. It includes free youth admission to all regular season UMBC home games, plus a t-shirt and a drawstring backpack. Membership is only $35. It makes a great gift. Visit UMBCRetrievers.com/Kids Club for more info. Membership is available for kids 12 and under in the Retriever Kids Club. Again, UMBCRetrievers.com/Kids Club.
If you can't listen or watch live, you can subscribe to the show via Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Podcasts. Leave a 5-star review while you're there. Or, if lying isn't your thing, we'll take a 3.5-star review too.
All right, we are winding down for a Would You Rather Wednesday edition of GCR. Today's show has also been brought to you by, or how about this one's going to be brought to you by PressBoxOnline.com/offers. We love PressBoxOnline.com/offers. You know, I brought up that DraftKings offer, but that's not the only offer available right now. So if you're someone who's already signed up for DraftKings and you say, hey, I kind of can't take advantage of that one, do you have anything for me? Well, wouldn't you know we do? Cash in on the AFC and NFC Championship games. Go to PressBoxOnline.com/offers. Sign up with BetMGM, bet $10, and automatically get $200 in additional free bets. Get this promo and more. Go to PressBoxOnline.com/offers right now for over $2,000 in promo offers from all of Maryland's mobile sports books. All right, some of the other responses that came in for Would You Rather Wednesday. Numero uno. John Proctor, I think you go younger here. Get some new blood in the organization. Paul Novilando, younger, up-and-coming offensive coach with new ideas, better chance of the offense continuing to evolve. My man T'Challa, Brian Johnson or Zach Robinson, that's it, that's all. Adit, young and exciting, and hope that once Harbaugh retires, you have 2 trusted internal options with your offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator that could take the reins for 10 to 15 years. I get the kind of ideological side of that, but it wouldn't be how I would go about making my decision. Like, I wouldn't make a decision based on the idea of maybe we're getting a head coach in wait. There's too much that happens for me to think, unless you, like John Harbaugh has internally told you, like, next year is my last year, and you think that would be maybe like an Eric Bieniemy or a Byron Leftwich would come into the conversation at that point, where like
grooming them. And,
do you feel like you're? But I don't know if that's who you'd want to hire if you were doing an open coaching search. So I just don't think I would think that.
Realistically, how long do you think they can wait before they make an offensive coordinator hire?
They typically like to have the staff in place by the Senior Bowl. So we're talking about next week. I mean, now they don't have to. Obviously, they can. If the plan is to keep some of the offensive staff intact, like if they are internally telling offensive coordinator candidates, we want you to keep the majority of our staff, then they'd be in a far better place to say, we can wait on this, go down to the Senior Bowl with, some of the offensive staffers that we have right now and still feel pretty good. But you usually want to have these things. The Senior Bowl always tends to be the line of demarcation of, which is why a lot of people talked about the calendar not working, because you have coaches that are coaching in the Super Bowl and you can't, there's a lot of bad that's involved with that. but you like to be able to send your staff down to the Senior Bowl with some continuity there and knowing, like, here's who's looking at what. So it's not necessary. It's kind of typically been how teams have wanted to do things. Ravenism, serious proven experience on the offensive side. Orioles Idiot says 2023 is a win-now year, so I go with a one-and-done hire like Frank Reich while building the short list to get a new fresh guy in 2024. It's an interesting argument, right? That, like, you don't really particularly if it's Lamar Jackson on the tag, you definitely don't want growing pains. Like, you definitely don't want someone who's going to come in and have to work their way into the job. While we all feel pretty good about Mike McDonald at this point, like, I don't think you want to do that with your offense. Like, I think you want to have somebody that you know they're going to hit the ground running from week one, particularly if you're trying to still get whatever answer about Lamar Jackson, which is insane to think you're still trying to get answers about Lamar Jackson. I hate this part of the equation. I hate it. Brian, we've done the retread, so let's ride with a fresh, new, exciting. Have we ever hired someone who wasn't recycled? I guess if you're talking about offensive coordinator specifically, have you ever hired someone that wasn't recycled? So Greg Roman, Marty Mornhinweg, Jim Caldwell, Gary Kubiak, Mark Trestman, Cam Cameron. We've gotten all the way back to the Brian Billick era. I hear you. And now, of course, the defensive coordinator, that's typically always been what they've done. They've almost always just promoted either from within or essentially from within. Like Mike McDonald wasn't actually technically from within, but he might as well have been because clearly he had been here before he had come up with the Ravens. He just disappeared for a year and then came back. They've almost always gone that route on defensive coordinator hires. But to be fair, offensive coordinator hires, it's flurrying. How about that? Yeah. Offensive coordinator hires have been the other way. Again, I was going to say I would prefer younger, fresher, but I actually, don't know that I felt that with any amount of conviction. I just want to get the right guy, right? Like, Gary Kubiak was a retread. How'd that work out? I got no problem. I just want to get the guy. That's all I really care about. Just get me the guy. That's it. And then the argument about I don't think Frank Reich is taking this job unless he knows that Lamar Jackson is going to be his quarterback for a little while. You know, again, there could be the scenario where if he knows he's going to be the quarterback for a year, he's only really planning on being here for a year and then getting another head coaching job. But I don't know. I like the idea that presents some stability. Number 2, bunch of the responses that came in. Again, you can still get your responses in at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter for Would You Rather Wednesday, and we will hook somebody up with another $25 gift card to Glory Days. Number 2 was the question about which would you rather do, trade for all the players and coaches from the Chiefs or all the players and coaches from the Bengals. This one has been more Bengals. KZ, the Bengals have the better overall roster. I like the coach, so yeah. Ivan, Bengals, only because I think they're the more complete team despite Mahomes being better than Burrow. Orioles Idiot was the first one to bring up the argument. Chiefs are still winning without losing, or after losing Tyreek. I don't have enough evidence to trust the Bengals front office to keep the unit together after Burrow gets paid. Brian, I think I trade with the Chiefs. In that 5 years, you might only have to face Lamar a few times, whereas the Bengals, you're facing him for at least 10. Remember, in this trade, the Bengals are becoming the Ravens.
Well, so I guess Lamar goes to Cincinnati.
That would be essentially, you're swapping, right? Like, so I guess you would say, although the Bengals keep Lamar around, or does he end up ending up with the Raiders, and then he's got to face the Chiefs? I think we're going too deep with that. John Proctor's trying to cheat. What the hell is wrong with you, you son of a bitch? Of all people, you should know. Can we just swap wide receivers with Cincy? I would gladly take that option all day. No. It's a game. You're not new. What's wrong with you? And nobody really wants to bite on number 3. Nobody really wants to respond to number 3. Everybody who's responding is trying to cheat their way out of it.
Or they.
Well, Ken Zales, I'm in that 46 to 55 category. No.
Because he's 20?
No, you're putting yourself back. In order to answer this question, you have to transport yourself
he's
to
what,
being
29?
in the KZ.
Yeah.
You have to transport yourself to being in the mid to late 20s. And remembering what you were like at that point. And remembering that you like to go out, you like to party, you like to all those things. Now imagine either you're going to have a person hanging around, your best friend.
Not an 8-year-old. It's not going to be an 8-year-old.
Not an 8-year-old no matter what.
I'm
Under
telling you
no
right now,
circumstances.
it's not going to be the 8-year-old.
Definitely not going to be an 8-year-old. You're right. Neither scenario involves an 8-year-old.
If it looks like
it's
a
not.
duck,
It's not.
and it quacks
It's
like a duck.
most certainly not. You keep trying to make that a thing, but it's not. Proctor, I can't imagine how difficult dating would be for the person who looks and sounds like a child. I can sympathize. Anyone who could date that person would have a lifetime of judgment coming, and rightfully so. I have to go with the older option here. Brian, option 1, only because I think you get less people staring at you like you're a creep, and you wouldn't need to keep explaining. Okay, I just don't. I have things in common with a 23-year-old. Yes, it would be weird. Like, I get that part of it. It's weird, and I have a lot of questions for my buddy. I swear to God, when I
learned something from the 45-year-old.
When I saw this story pop up, I said the first thing I would want to say is, I need to see your internet history. I'm not kidding. Everything's cool as long as I look at your internet history and I don't find a bunch of things I want to find. I don't want to find. Like, if all's good, if I go through your internet history and you watch normal pornography and you're a normal who just so happened to find someone, love is love. Like, I can get that. If you just happen to find someone, there's little people, right? Like, there are normal-sized people that date little people all the time. Whatever it is, that's fine. I just need to know with certainty that it is a unique scenario and that you're not a creep. So the first thing I do when my buddy presents
so you're picking
this
the
to
8-year-old?
There is no 8-year-old,
It's
Griffin.
8-year-old.
There's no 8-year-old involved in the process. None of them. I'm telling you, the idea of trying to have a 47-year-old hang out with me and my friends when I was in my mid to late 20s, I don't know. I don't think that they're going to get along with just playing NBA Jam on my...
Oh, my God. I'm looking at I'm finally clicking through the story. It looks terrible.
It looks terrible. She's 23. You just want to ignore that part of it.
I wouldn't be able to...
You're all right. I'm not saying that I don't think
Can
it's
I turn
weird.
the sound on this? I want to hear
I
it
think
talk.
it's weird. No, why would you do that? Don't say it. Don't do that. Don't.
I didn't mean to say that.
Don't.
I want to hear... I said her, didn't I?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
No, you didn't.
I want to hear her talk.
We can't have adult conversations on this show. We can't have normal adult conversations.
You should maybe take the Odyssey test.
Yeah, right. Try this all again. Continue to get me your responses at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter. Hey, gambling can be fun, but you should set a limit and stay within it. Remember that if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org 24/7. All right, Tidbit. Is that what we're doing? Did we do everything that we needed to do today?
I believe so.
I think we're good. Tidbit is brought to you today by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
All right, so Jamar Chase over the weekend joined this Hall of Famer as the only NFL players in history to have 3,000 receiving yards and 25 receiving touchdowns in their first two seasons. This includes the playoffs.
Including playoffs?
Yeah, 3,000 yards, 25.
That's not a thing.
Well, for this stat, it is.
Then it's irrelevant.
It's not because it's
you don't include the playoffs.
Randy Moss and Jamar Chase. The only
God
two.
bless. I mean, good for him, but that's not a thing.
And I changed my other tidbit at the last second because I was looking up the offensive coordinator thing, and I want to know if you can name. There's been 9 offensive coordinators. I want to know if you can name who has been the most successful based on winning percentage. And just go down in sequential order.
For the Ravens?
For the Ravens, yeah.
Based
Ravens.
on winning percentage?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if their offense was any good.
Yeah, based on winning percentage.
Well, this is also tricky because... So...
Who would be at the top?
Well, Greg Roman is probably... No. Yeah, Greg Roman's probably at the top.
Is he your guess? He's your guess for the
Well, I'm
top.
between Greg Roman and Cam Cameron.
You going to go with Greg Roman?
Yeah, Greg Roman.
Greg Roman is 2.
Cam
Cameron is
number
1. He
1.
went 54 and 26, a 67.5% winning percentage. Roman,
all right.
65.2%.
All right. So, Kubiak.
Kubiak is 3. Went 10 and 6 and 14.
Now I'm between Morningweg.
Morningweg is 4th, 59.4% winning in 17 and 18. 19 and 13 was his record.
I got to write down. All right, so it's Fossil, Trestman, Neuheisel, Kavanaugh, and Billick.
Billick is
You
that
didn't count?
just when they not or at
You
least
didn't count
when I on this.
So who am I?
Pro
Oh,
Football
Caldwell,
History.
of course.
Yeah, Caldwell.
Well, how do you count? I'll say Caldwell is next, but it's probably right around 500 because the following season they were just under 500, and they count the couple of games from the previous season. But I'll say Caldwell's next.
Yeah, Caldwell is not next. He is sixth though. He did go 500, 8-8.
So then
Caldwell's sixth. Who is fifth?
So then, because that last season with Neuheisel was disastrous. So Fossil's next.
It is not Fossil. Fossil would be after Caldwell though.
So it's Kavanaugh because the Super Bowl year lifted him up.
Yes, Kavanaugh was 56-40 with a 58% winning.
So Kavanaugh,
percentage from 99 to
Caldwell,
04.
then Fossil, and then
And the final two.
Those years are both bad.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Tressman, Neuheisel.
Correct.
Okay.
Mark
I mean,
Tressman.
they were both just bad.
13-19, Mark Tressman, and then Neuheisel was 5-11.
Yeah, I mean that was a bad season. It was just a really, really bad season. All right, very good, very good.
Well done.
Tidbit was also brought to you today. God, remembering some of those things. You left. Well, you got to figure out what Billick's record would have been when he was the offense coordinator. Today's show, that tidbit was also brought to you by the print issue of Press Box, which again is available for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. Adley Rutschman on the cover. We celebrate the top people, performances, and moments of 2022 in our best of issue. Tubular brought to you by UMBC Basketball. UMBC women home tonight against NJIT, and then home Saturday afternoon against Vermont. The UMBC men back home next Wednesday against Binghamton. Get your tickets right now, umbcretrievers.com, to experience game day at the Peak. Here's what's coming up totally tubular-wise this evening. As we mentioned, Maryland-Wisconsin, 5-point line is what we came to on that one. 7 o'clock on Big Ten Network, followed by Indiana-Minnesota. Local teams in action tonight, all on the road. Loyola's at Lafayette at 7. UMBC is at NJIT at 7. Navy is at Bucknell at 7, all on ESPN+. The rest of the college basketball, find at glennclarkradio.com. ESPN Nets Sixers at 7:30, Grizzlies Warriors at 10, and then the Australian Open women's semifinals both overnight, which stinks. It's just the way it goes. But late tonight, 3 a.m. tomorrow for both of these. Elena Rybakina and Victoria Azarenka, Magdalene and Arina Sabalenka, the Australian Open women's semifinals tonight. Overnight, again, 3 a.m. on ESPN. NBC Sports Washington, Wizards Rockets at 8, TNT Rangers Maple Leafs at 7, Blue Jackets Oilers at 9:30, HBO Max for the friendly between Serbia and the United States. Everything went over to
Max.
Warner got the U.S. soccer rights. So some of them will be on TNT. It's like what CBS was doing when they were only putting some on Paramount Plus to try to get you to buy Paramount Plus. Warner's doing the same thing. Some of these matches will be on TNT. Others will be on HBO Max. This one tonight is on HBO Max against Serbia, 10 o'clock. Golf Channel for PGA, round 1 of the Farmers Insurance Open. We were just talking about with Drew at 3 o'clock. TBS for AEW Dynamite at 8. Anything non-sports-wise?
Yeah, I should have told Drew that Brett Goldstein's going to be on Stephen Colbert.
Do we have? What's the date?
I haven't seen a date yet, but I know.
Ted Lasso. What else would he be promoting though? Is he
he's
in something else?
Yeah, he's
oh,
in
is he?
something. I
Okay.
forget what.
All right.
Shoot.
All right. It still just says.
Comes out
It
Friday.
still just says spring. That's all we're getting.
Where's Brett Goldstein?
Brett
I'm trying to
Goldstein.
figure out what else he's coming in. There's something coming out this weekend.
All right. Very good. I
forget
believe
what
you.
it is.
The Shrinking Show
yes.
on Apple
Yep.
Plus.
Yep.
Okay.
Jason Segel.
Yep.
Also tonight, Celebrity Name That Tune's going to be Tyron Woodley and Tiki Barber on Fox.
Fine.
The NFL Tailgate Takedown is on the Food Network. That show started
Also
like 2 weeks
fine.
ago. It's got Vince Wilfork and Eddie Jackson. Ian Rappaport's a judge.
Who's Eddie Jackson?
The Bears.
The
Bears,
safety.
yeah,
My
the-
bad.
yeah,
Oh
the
my
Bears
God,
safety.
that is kind of embarrassing.
Also,
I
Sonny
thought it was
Anderson.
a former player. I'm like, who the hell am I missing? Yeah.
New episode of Bad Batch, of course, Star Wars show
Oh,
on Disney
yeah,
Plus,
yeah.
and this movie called Extraordinary is out on Hulu.
You purposely not include like Abbott Elementary. It's a very popular show.
It's on the thing. It's on
But
it has it.
I would
Actually,
when I
don't think
asked
there's
for
a new episode tonight. Cause
why wouldn't there be a new episode tonight?
For whatever reason, I didn't include it, so I.
That's
think
really
that would
bizarre.
Yeah, there's not a new episode. But yeah, Extraordinary is like this girl doesn't have a superpower in a world where everyone has superpowers. It's like
I got a bunch of things I got to catch up on because then yesterday I was hoping to catch up on other things. Then I got the
catch up on Last of Us.
No, I'm not. It's not my thing. Like
Oh,
everybody,
come on.
I know everybody's telling it's good.
It is good.
It was a video game originally.
Yeah, it was a video game originally. And
I mean, maybe I'll look at it at some point. I just have other things that are higher on the list for
Pedro
me. to
Pascal,
look
very
at.
good.
I'm sure you're correct about that.
Yeah. I didn't play the video game,
I
but-
watched the 30 for 30 yesterday instead.
Oh, right.
That was
Right.
what I did with my day.
Do I get
so.
like?
I don't know the answer to that yet because I don't know if it's one of those ones that blows up after the first viewing of it. Like I just don't know the answer. It took, by the way, Old Man Colson and I, it took us about an hour trying to figure out how to cast something to this TV. I finally, without his help, figured it out. Yeah. You felt John's over there like, all you got to do is turn it on the laptop and it'll be right there. Yeah, I got it. I figured it out.
Good job.
But I had to do it from my phone in order to make it work, which is really quite awkward. But I did. I got it up on the TV screen. I'm very, very proud of myself. I felt like I had accomplished something. It lost about 30 minutes of my day just trying to figure out how to get something up on a screen. Hell of a day. All right, very good. Everything else is at glennclarkradio.com. Thanks today to Drew Forrester. Thanks also to Vinnie Iyer. And thanks as well to Brian McFarland. We'll get it all up in the greatest hits section of the
Oh, my God, it's so good.
tab at glennclarkradio.com. Trey Mancini joins us tomorrow. Looking forward to that.
When do we want to do the pork and beans popsicles?
It sort of depends on their availability.
Right,
I'm just
okay.
trying to find a way.
Okay.
We're not going to do more side bets, so like we can do
You
it
be
whenever we
patient
can
with
do
it.
it. I would like to get everybody together. If we can't, we'll figure it out. Proctor's like, well, I can only do Fridays. I don't want to do it on Friday because Stan's here on Fridays. So we just got to figure out when it can stew for a little while because we're not going to have another side bet coming. But we will do it. I promise you we're going to do it. It's just the last one that we have to pay off.
Can't wait.
You have to do it too.
I know,
You
I know.
son of a bitch. You, me, Proctor, and Melissa. So we got to make that happen. But yeah, we'll do our picks for championship weekend tomorrow. Proctor's trying to play a game where he's telling me that he's already put, in fact, on the sheet that he is picking Cincinnati. Because he's trying to dupe me into picking Cincinnati so that he can switch it out for Kansas City when he emails you tonight and make sure that, like, we've got to pick the different. Or he wants me to think that he's doing that. Like, he's trying to go into mental warfare. I'm just going to pick who I think is going to win the games or cover. You know, like, that's all I'm going to do. You're not getting me involved with
You
this.
gonna pick who wins or
Proctor.
who covers?
Well, the spreads are small, so
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be picking who I think is going to win for the most part. Although, didn't it flip? Isn't Cincinnati now favored?
Yes, Cincinnati, they were 1.5 point dogs, and then it flipped to, I think they might have been all the way down to 2. I think they're back to 1.5 favorites.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of people. I think at some places it got down to 2.5 yesterday.
Man.
So very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Very good. Thanks to all them. Thanks to everybody at what?
I pull up the sheet and see John.
Yeah, he's already put Cincinnati on there because he's playing a game. Like he wants me to either do one of two things. He either wants me to think that that's really what he's doing, so I'll just pick Cincinnati. All's good here. Or he wants me to think that way. It's a chess match for him, but I'm not getting involved. You're not duping me, man. I'm just gonna pick the game the way that I think it's gonna go. I'm not trying to pick like you. I'm just trying to pick a winner, baby. That's all I'm trying to do here. That's my thought process. All right. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, the Baltimore County Police Department, Problem Gambling, Royal Farms, the Costa Sin, Maryland Jockey Club, Grade 8's Memorabilia, Maryland Vascular Specialists, UMBC Athletics, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Wednesday evening. Go Terps, go Loyola, go UMBC, go Navy. Duke sucks.